Hello, everybody. Welcome into my latest live broadcast. My name is Carey Holzman. Today is Thursday, the 26th of December, 2019. Those of you who celebrate Christmas, I hope you had a good Christmas. And those of you who don't, well, hopefully you at least had the day off and you can enjoy that, right? And hope you enjoyed the 24-hour, it's actually closer to about 40-hour live stream. A lot of upload bandwidth issues there, a lot of stopping and starting. Hopefully today will go smoothly. We'll find out soon enough. Welcome in, everybody, and we'll give folks a chance to jump in the chat here momentarily. Well, I'm stalling. There's only like 50 people watching right now, so we'll give it a little time for some other people to jump in before we get started. My thanks once again to all the generosity of the folks that sent Christmas cards and contributions and other holiday wishes my way, and of course, back at you twofold. Hope you guys all over the world had at least a pleasant day, and hopefully you still have a couple more days of that. A lot of you guys out there are able to have time off of work until Monday. Let's hope that's the case. If not, well, I'm sorry you had to go back to work. But I enjoy what I do. So for me, this isn't working at all. This is my play. In fact, today, we got 223 people watching, so I'm going to roll into talking about today. I've got a repair I'm going to share with you. Excuse me. James Griffin just contributed $10. Thank you, James. He says, happy holidays from Alaska. Thank you, James. Thank you very much. Excuse me. A gentleman wrote, I don't know what's wrong with my voice today. I think you can imagine Christmas at my house, right? And just me unwrapping. Oh, it's another 12-pack of Coke. How did you know? I saw this giant can of soda. Look at this bad boy. It's like a Coke tall boy. I was like, I haven't seen that before. Like, to give you some perspective, like this is a normal can. Right? So I mean, that's for when I'm really thirsty. That's my Christmas present. Oh, another can of Coke. All right, we'll save that for a special occasion. Like a fine wine, it shall sit in my cellar. Let's see if I can get my voice. I'm sure that's pleasant to listen to. Brendan Looney's just contributed £2. Hey, thank you, Brendan. Hello to Don Walters and Nick Poverman, Steve Bernstein and David Anderson, Steve Devine, John Mallory, Peter Doss, Peter Unwin, My Way Gaming, Glenn Davies, Randall Hill, Alex Cheek, Paul Wright, and Patrick Manny, Wesley L95, David R. Register, Luke Greenia, Chris Storer, thanks you guys, always good to see you. Wayne Lawrence, Ben DeCure, of course, Ben. Zarian Art Drawing Tutorials and Speed Paints. Michael Mancini, Gary Tatum, Michael Collis. Welcome in, Al Hestapez, Sergio Kochet, Eddie Casanova, Adam Burdick, Michael M., all my friends in blue. Thanks you guys for joining me today. I really need to get my voice here. Bear Paws just contributed £10. He says, here's some for Cokes for you and some treats for the dogs. Right on. And Madi Yoel just contributed $2. Thank you, Madi. Thanks to everybody, again, for all of your kindness and support. So I got an email from somebody who said they built a system back in 2016. It was running great. It had some issues. Apparently, the liquid cooler they used, the pump died. Remember what I always say, that in general, if you're going to go with an all-in-one liquid cooler, they generally last about 3 to 5 years. He was pretty much right on year 3, and it died, and he replaced it. The reason he knew something was wrong is the machine started crashing. Once he replaced the cooler, the machine continued crashing. He's tried numerous things to try and get it up and running, has run out of ideas, and asked if I would take a look at it. So he shipped it to me. It arrived, I think the day before Christmas, or maybe the day before that. I've only had it a couple days. And he shipped it UPS, which I don't recommend. UPS is fine for little stuff, but the problem is UPS uses a real thin box if you let them box it at their UPS store. Every computer that arrives from UPS pretty much arrives with some form of damage. And this is a big, big computer. I wasn't expecting anything nearly this size. And yesterday on Christmas Day, I tried to get caught up on a lot of projects I had going on because it was a nice, quiet day for me. And I just let the live stream, run some pre-recorded builds. And I started on this repair, which is good. That means I got everything else done prior. I also want to mention on the other build, the last build I did, which is got the Be Quiet Pure Base 500 with the Be Quiet Straight Power 11 power supply. They saw the video, the folks at Be Quiet, and they mailed me a new power cable. I had it the next day. It's crazy how fast they got on that real quickly. And I also talked to the folks at Silverstone, and I just received notification of a package being shipped that'll have the new. They're shipping me two things. They're going to ship me a new fan because it looks like the LEDs are bad on the one fan. And they're shipping me another PF240 so I can make a how to install tutorial because their instructions are really bad and they know it. So I will make another video basically for them utilizing that cooler. But I'm very impressed with the cooler. So I also want to try it on another system with a different motherboard and different temperature sensors to see if it's really as cool as it appears to be. And Be Quiet also sent me, where is it? It's right here somewhere. Oh, they sent me a bunch of Go Faster stickers. So I was like, what's this? Business cards? Nope, they're stickers. So that's kind of cool. I'll put that up here with the Be Quiet case. Let's see. Looks like I missed something here in the chat room. Chris's Tech and Variety channel has contributed $2. He says, I must not be a mod anymore. No, you're still a mod. Anyway, so this computer arrived. Now this is from Michael in Tennessee. This was shipped all the way from Tennessee to Arizona. Also, Mike Smith of TechVets received his computer. It was supposed to arrive the day before Christmas on Tuesday. It ended up arriving the day before that on Monday. So FedEx really did a great job. And Mike filmed unboxing it and turning it on for the first time. And then Mike has been texting me in amazement, if I can just pat myself on the back, about how incredibly fast that system is and how unbelievably quiet it is. In fact, he had to move his video card from his current rig into that machine. He needed a couple of hard drives and reinstall and reconfigure software. And Mike fixed the TechVets website. That's back up and running as it should be. So tech-vets.com. There's a donate button in the upper right corner of the website if you want to contribute to the channel. That's a great way to do that, to support either this YouTube channel or the TechVets podcast. Mike wants to do another TechVets before the end of the year using the new rig to process everything. So I'm really excited about that. And we've got a few days. So hopefully within a few days we'll have a new TechVets episode. If you're not aware of TechVets, it's just a, well, it started as just a podcast, just an audio digital broadcast that you can download and listen to anytime, anywhere. We've never charged for it. It's always been free, and we've been doing this now for like 10 years, 13 years. I don't know. It's been a long time. We don't do it very often, though. So I think we've only done, 3-4 shows this year. But we always talk about the trials and tribulations of what it's really like to be in the computer repair business. And we have two different computer repair businesses in the sense of the kind of work that we do. My work is pretty basic and simple compared to what he does. And he makes a lot more money than I do. And he's a lot busier than I am. And he takes more vacations than I do. But that being said, it brings two opposing, I wouldn't even say they're opposing, perspectives of the business, different ways you're going to find your groove, if you will. And what Mike does is not wrong or right, and what I do is not wrong or right. But what I do works for me, and what he does works for him. And so we have this sharing not only of stories and experiences, but also of our personal opinions regarding, well, if I were you, here's what I would do. And I think it makes for a very interesting broadcast. because we never get upset at each other. We never, insult or take anything personally with one another. It's really just an exchange of perspective. And I hope you guys will join us on the next Tech Vets, which should be any day now. Jeremy Kramer's contributed $20. Very generous. Thank you, Jeremy. He says, here is, hold on, scrolling off. Here we go. Here is for you, Carey, and that cute tech lady on Quick Tips channel. Who is she? Take her out to lunch for her good work. That is my little sister. And thank you for contributing to the channel. I appreciate that very much. So, somebody says they tried going to Tech Vets and it's not loading. Hold on, let me just check. I know we were supposed to be getting an upgrade done to PHP, and if they're doing that today, I have to determine in the chat room if somebody's just going to the wrong place. No, Tech Vets works fine. It's perfectly fine. tech-vets.com, that's the website. Can Mike build computers and repair them the way you can? Mike can, he doesn't want to. Mike built computers in the early 90s, late 80s when there was money to be made in it. Mike is a big guy, and it's not real easy for him to get he's a big guy. If you've seen him next to me, there's videos here where we're in person. He is taller and wider than me, and as a result, as computers keep shrinking down and getting smaller and smaller, things are a little bit more difficult. And not only that, he's not interested in it. Like, for me, one of the advantages I have is I can get my hands in tight places when it comes to this stuff. And if I didn't, I'd have to get some kind of tools. I'd have to figure out a way to work around physical limitations. Like right now, my eyes aren't the way they used to be. And so I have to get some glasses sometimes. And if it was something I didn't enjoy doing, those would become excuses as to why. But regardless of that, what Mike does, from where I stand, requires a lot more in-depth knowledge that I don't have about the internals of things like VLANs and subnets and managed switches. This is all stuff I don't deal with. I don't have to deal with it. It doesn't do me or my clients any good. Mike is a whole nother level. He's like a whole nother level above me from my perspective in the kind of work that he does. Like, anybody can do what I do. That's why I make a YouTube channel, to encourage people who, think this is a special skill set. It has become a skill set through repetition because I enjoy it so much. But it didn't require any special education, only an extreme interest. What Mike is doing, on the other hand, requires far more in-depth internals knowledge with regards to, the things I just mentioned. On top of dealing with HIPAA laws and FINRA laws, which, HIPAA is pretty basic, but FINRA gets pretty complicated with encryption, and it requires absolute prerequisite of understanding what those requirements are in order to achieve those level of jobs. And those level of jobs are usually from companies that deal with millions of dollars in revenue, and so you're going to get paid well, basically, is what I'm saying. You're going to be able to charge more and get paid well. You're not knocking on somebody's door going, hey, can I fix your computer, and posting that on Craigslist. What he's doing is way above that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's, I can't do what Mike does. Mike would have to train me, but Mike could do what I'm doing. He just doesn't want to. All right, so hopefully we clear that up. Which Mike am I talking about? No, I'm not talking about Subaru Mike. Subaru Mike works on Subarus. I'm talking about Mike Smith, my partner and co-host on the Tech Vets podcast. Aaron Armstrong, Computer Repair and Tips, has contributed $5. Thank you, AA Ron. He says, from one computer repair tech to another, I hope you had a great Christmas yesterday. I love your content. Keep it up. Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. All I can think of is Key and Peele. You done messed up now, AA Ron? Balake! Where's Balake? My name's Blake. Oh, no, you didn't. It's a whole skit on YouTube about an inner city school teacher working in the... Anyway, never mind. Credit to Key and Peele. You done messed up, AA Ron. Anyway, So we should have a tech vets coming up soon. And let's get back to this repair. So yesterday I started on this repair. Wanted to see what I was getting myself into. My original intent was to be able to prepare the machine. Because this customer has a desktop, I don't know anything about it, I thought I would hide all the icons and make sure that when I booted up live on camera, it wasn't going to show anything that's not appropriate or personal information. But I never even got that far. The machine would fail to boot, and I started to see a lot of a lot of things incorrect with the way the system was built and configured. And there's a part of me that wished I had filmed it, but on the other hand, when I'm live and on camera, I tend to not focus as much on the project because I've got to think about where am I in the frame. I got to think about, is the broadcast going out, checking the status of it. There's too many things I've got to juggle. So when I'm alone and I can focus on the project, I tend to catch a lot more, a lot faster. So a couple of things. I took the battery out of the motherboard. Every time I turn this board on, it has a diagnostic LED. It'll stop at like 4F, whatever that is. And it would say there's a 15% overclock. And I would save the BIOS. I would reset the BIOS to defaults, restart the computer, and then it'll say 15% overclock again. Other times it doesn't. So I thought, well, I'm going to check the battery. So this is the little CR2032 battery that's on the motherboard. And this battery won't even budge the needle on the memory tester. Like, that's how dead it is. Usually, to move, the needle will move. Nothing. So I changed the battery, thought, well, that's good. Still didn't make a difference. So I thought, okay, I'm going to pull this graphics card out and I'm going to unplug everything from the board that isn't absolutely needed. So I pulled out it's got a 980, I think that's what that is, GTX 980. Now remember, this was built in 2016, so at that time, this I'm sure was a high-end and very expensive graphics card. I changed its power supply. Well, I didn't change it. I unplugged it and used my own power supply. This is a Corsair HX850i. That made no difference. So I started unplugging USB cables, audio cables, everything we don't need to have. And that's when I realized all of his front port umbilical cables, the power switch, reset switch, hard drive LED, power LED, those were all on vertically. These little cables, they go on like this. There's 2 rows of pins, and they go on like that. He put them on like this. He connected both rows of pins. Now here's the weird thing. On the power switch, at least on this motherboard, and I don't know, I haven't really tried this, but if I put the power switch on vertically, so it's connecting to the reset switch below it, power switch still works. It still turns on and off. Now, as for the LEDs and lights, I didn't check them because they're all up at the top, and I'm not that tall. I'm not Mike Smith, so I can't see it. And I'm looking at it from this perspective. Also, when it turns on, it made a horrific noise, just. So I put my hand on the fan, and then it went. And then I put my hand on this fan, and it went. And then I put my hand on this fan, and then all the noise went away. So all 3 original case fans are shot. They're gone. They are on their way out. So these 2 front case fans have LEDs. They light up. If the customer wants to replace them, which he should, we'll have to, if he wants the LEDs, we'll have to order special fans for that. And then the rear case fan is nothing special. It's just a regular old case fan back there. So all 3 fans are bad. And I got the machine, I took the RAM out, so I started with 2 sticks of RAM. He's got some pretty good RAM in here, 4 sticks of Corsair Vengeance. Again, everything, remember, this was built in 2016, so bear that in mind when I show you. He's got a 32 gig kit, I believe that's what that is. So there's 4 sticks. I took out 2 sticks, got the machine to boot, and realized it had a really old BIOS on it. Really, really old, like from back in 2016. So I went to the ASUS website because this motherboard's an ASUS Z170 Deluxe, Z170 Deluxe from ASUS. Downloaded the latest BIOS, flashed it, and it still would reboot and say 15% over. I don't know, it was weird. So I'm like, well, something weird going on here. But at least it was booting. And I ran memtest, and the 2 sticks of RAM flied right through memtest, no problem. Took those 2 sticks out, put the other 2 sticks in, ran memtest again, machine flies, no problem. Put all 4 sticks of RAM in, machine won't boot. So I took the other 2 sticks back out. Now it's booting. Now I'm going to run Prime 95 because this cooler, I don't know, I don't really feel anything moving on it. And ran that, and Prime 95 hit 80 degrees centigrade within 6 minutes. Now, with a liquid cooler, that shouldn't be happening. So I took the liquid cooler apart. Well, first I turned the machine around to look at the bracket. Can I turn this? This bracket right here was put on sideways. And I don't really know that that's an issue. I suspect it is. Let me show you, because I took pictures of it so I can show you guys what this is going to look like here. Just a minute. Got to find my photos. They're here somewhere. Photos, photos, photos. Here we go. Okay. So you can see the bracket on sideways. And the reason that's a problem, potentially, is it's making contact with the CPU. You see the metal plate that it's going around? It's hitting the top and bottom of the metal plate, which means that bracket can't sit flat. Let's see, I got another picture here. That one doesn't really look that different. Let's go to another one. I was trying to get different angles to try and show you. Like if we try and look up underneath of it, kind of looks like that. See what I'm trying to say? How the plastic bracket is hitting that metal and it's not sitting flush against the motherboard. So I took that apart and rotated it in the proper orientation. So now, hold on, is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. So now it looks like that. Now it's, flat. But here's the problem. I think it bent the bracket permanently. When I tell you it's important to tighten the screws crossways on your heatsink, or it can cause warpage, I'm not quite sure people really understand what I'm saying. Typically, when you build a computer, it doesn't really matter what order of the screws you put in, but when you put that heatsink on your CPU, it's got to be perfectly flat. So you always go to one corner first, as if you have a choice, and then go to the opposite corner next. Don't go around in a circle, either way, clockwise or counterclockwise. Because what happens if you tighten down the screws in a circle is it twists and it bends, and it won't make contact very often. These two surfaces, let's say this is the top of the CPU and this is the bottom of the heatsink, they'll sit like this or like this. And you can't tell from looking on top that this is happening because you didn't tighten the screws opposite of each other so that when one corner goes down, then the opposite corner goes down, then the next corner goes down, and the next corner goes down, and it's completely flat. So, to give you an example that that is real, because I think some people think that's not real, I want to show you what I saw when I took the water pump off. This is the water pump, and it's kind of a blurry picture. But look at this one. You can see the factory thermal compound. This was applied at the factory. So all he did is take the water pump out, as he should have, and mount it to the top of a clean CPU. And you can see the texture of the original factory application right down the center, where it never even made contact with the CPU. And further, if we just take a look at the CPU, that's why people, what software do you use to diagnose a computer? I use my brain and my eyeballs. No piece of software is going to tell you this. You have to take it apart and look at it. If you look at the CPU here, in this case it's a 6700K, look at the lack of thermal compound. I should not be able to read that CPU. Like, I didn't wipe this off. I didn't clean it. That's exactly the way the water pump came off. So the entire surface of that CPU, right down the middle, had no contact whatsoever with that heatsink. There's your evidence of it right there. Now, you can't tell that from looking at it when it's assembled, because when it's assembled, you know, it looks pretty and you go, oh, isn't that great? Doesn't that look lovely? You can't see that that's not making contact. You have to take it apart. So, when I tell you it's important you put the screws on opposite angles, opposite corners, not angles, opposite corners, it's to make sure that that CPU is going to, the heatsink is going to sit flush on top of that CPU. That's why this is what happens. Now, I don't know if the customer put this, you know, tightened down the screw and then went to the next one and tightened it down and went all the way around. That's the wrong way. If that's what the customer did, I don't know. I asked the customer why they didn't update the BIOS. They said they thought that happened automatically. Okay, so let's take this time not to make fun of it, but to learn from it, because if one person can have that misunderstanding, then think about how many other people might have it. So it's important we use this opportunity as a teaching opportunity, so anybody who thinks that is corrected, okay? When it comes to this bracket needs to go on vertically as I've got it, not horizontally. And these front power LEDs and switches, these go on horizontally and not vertically. And I've demonstrated that in close-ups and numerous videos, so I'm not even sure how that even works. However, again, all teaching opportunities. Now, because the machine, I was getting it to boot up, I didn't even want to mess with the customer's 2 solid-state drives they've got in here. So I took a spare SSD, this is like a 256 Samsung 850 I had laying around, and installed Windows 10 on it, you know, so I could run Prime 95 and do those tests. After seeing how the CPU was running hot and I reseated it, it's still running hot. That CPU is still not making contact. I don't know why. I don't know if the customer might have used the wrong standoffs. I don't know if the back plate is damaged. And when I did a Google search on this, numerous other people with the Corsair coolers, the Corsair liquid coolers, are having issues with the CPU not firmly making contact, with the heatsink not making contact with the CPU. And they're saying it's the plastic bracket is buckling, that it's the plastic bracket, because it's plastic and not metal, under certain build conditions, it appears to bow or flex instead of sitting flat, and it's preventing, I mean, the water blocks on there tight, don't get me wrong. I'm calling it a heat sink, a water block, whatever. I mean the same thing. You can wiggle on this, do whatever you want. Somebody even bent the bracket trying to fix it. I'm not really interested in trying to repair this. I would call Corsair, open an RMA, and say, send me a new bracket, send me new standoffs, because one of those two things ain't right. But that's going to take time. So how do we get this out quickly? So I asked the customer, I said, look, how attached are you to liquid cooling? Because we have 3 options right now. We can call Corsair, you know, send an email, whatever, create an RMA, and we'll just put the repair on hold until parts come in and hope it works. Or we can order a new cooler if you want to have liquid cooling and you want that one. We can order a new one and we'll wait for parts to arrive and I'll install it. Or I can take that out and put a Mugen 5 in there, which you know I love the Mugen 5. And I said if we do that, all this extra cabling, all these cables, all these hoses, all this goes away because that's all part of the cooler. That's not even all of it. There's also a USB cable that goes on the block and goes down to the motherboard. So this adds a ton of cables and it adds weight. And he's already had one liquid cooler go out on him. So to me, it's like, Isn't that your clue to stop using these liquid coolers? Go to an air cooler. You'll never have that problem. Like the worst thing that'll happen is the fan will go out and you change the fan for 20 bucks. You won't have to take anything apart. The fan just unclips. So the customer said, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and put the Mugen in it. So that's what I'm about to do. But I want you to remember something. I haven't fixed the problem with the machine. Like for all I know, this could be a bad motherboard that's happening right now. Maybe some damage occurred to it. I will tell you that this customer is very lucky. And the reason is CPUs these days have thermal throttling and thermal protections. If this customer were to have done this 20 years ago, 15 years ago, his CPU would be toast. It would absolutely would have baked, it would have overheated and burned out. That's what used to happen. And it just goes to show you, you can run a computer without a heatsink or any type of cooling, and a modern day CPU will automatically shut itself down to prevent damage. Now that extra heat isn't good for it, but you know, even if you took 20 years off of its life, it's still got 50 or 60 years left in it, well beyond its useful life. These things are generally replaced, CPUs are generally upgraded or replaced every 4 to 6 years. Some people out there may be running a 10 or 12-year-old computer. Beyond that, almost impossible to run a computer on the internet with anything older than that. So as long as your components have a 12-year lifespan, in a worst-case scenario, anything beyond that is irrelevant and redundant because it won't matter to you anymore. Now, there's always going to be someone out there who's like, I got a 15-year-old computer. Hey, if that was me, I wouldn't brag about it. But, you know, if we're running Windows, a 15-year-old computer ain't going to cut it on the internet with the dangers that are out there. Well, I don't plug it into the internet. Okay, good for you. So we're talking about the general population and the general attitudes running a business of what I see, how often people replace computers, the problems with older computers that force people to have to replace them. Just because you tolerate the issues or work around the issues doesn't make it right, nor does it make it normal. So we're talking about the masses. What do the masses do? So when it comes to CPU life, worrying about killing it off early, it still has way more time left in it, you know, than you probably will ever use it for. And that's the only point I was trying to make on that. See, I can be my own troll. I don't need anybody to troll me. I can do it on my own. Now, because trolls are real simple. It's super easy for me to get into that frame of mind because I'm a simple guy. Anyway, so what I thought I would do today is pull the heatsink off, pull the water block off, take this radiator out, take all this unnecessary, you know, all this cabling. By the way, I had to untangle all this. I mean, this guy just slapped it all in there. He didn't care, which is weird because you think he went with all this RGB. The motherboard's RGB, the water block's RGB, the case has a window. You'd think you'd want really nice cable management. And I think what happened was, I think the guy got real frustrated and kind of gave up. I think he just was slapping it in there and is it going to work now kind of a thing. And then when it worked, he's like, I'm done with that for a while. And I totally get it. So this isn't to insult the customer in any way, shape, or form. But I also believe in having pride. I believe that, okay, you got it working, time to clean up the cabling. But maybe the problem is he never really got it working. He got it to boot, and then it started to crash or it wouldn't boot at all. And that's when he reached the sort of white flag waving, I'm going to call Carey. And I'm glad he did because there's a lot to be learned through here, and I enjoy this challenge. To me, this isn't frustrating, it's fun. I enjoy the puzzle of it, you know, figuring it out. And I will say, I advised him, again, not to ship it UPS. It arrived with a little bit of damage on one of these screens, maybe this bottom one here, yeah. So this screen up here goes on the top, and this was all bent inwards. I don't know how well you can see that. I kind of bent it back, but it was almost in the shape of a letter U. It was bent in really, really tough. You can kind of see a big dent right there. It's supposed to be all smooth. It's not supposed to have a big old bump up here. Anyway, he's got these fans on the on the radiator blowing air out. But then he's got, I think he had a screen on here. Do you have a screen? Oh, yeah. There's a screen built into this, which isn't too bad, but these filters are for filtering intake air, not exhaust air. So it's creating a back pressure where those fans are not able to push the air out with the same amount of force because the screen is blocking the airflow. So you don't want a screen on exhaust air. Unfortunately, with this case, this is some kind of Corsair case. I don't know what model it is. It doesn't offer apparently a top without a screen on it. It's not a big deal. It really isn't. He also didn't take, there's a piece of clear plastic over this heatsink that over the last 3 years has turned it yellow and started to bubble. So, my OCD was like, that's coming off. And I don't know what sort of heat-related problems that could have had. And he also left the little plastic covers on the little Vengeance logo on the RAM that you always see me remove. That doesn't really make any difference. It's my own little, what do you want to call it? It's just really important to me to take the plastic off. I'm funny that way. So nothing that would necessarily cause these problems, although this piece of plastic does need to come off of here because this is a heatsink. And so putting anything on it reduces its efficiency with how well it's going to dissipate heat. So it may not reduce it by much, but then it just looks terrible over time as the plastic turns yellow, starts to bubble up. And you're like, what's wrong with this motherboard? Oh, someone left the plastic on it. Okay, I think I got all the information. That was last night. This is everything I figured out, so now you're up to speed. Let's see what I missed in the chat. 1,074 people are watching. Welcome in, everybody. Technologic says, I'm not bragging, but I have a whole 2 gigs of RAM on my Vista Custom. That's funny. John Stalick has contributed $2. He says, have you ever used a front panel Q connector? Yes, it's been demonstrated on the channel many times. The Q connector from Asus and the G connector from Gigabyte. Those have been demonstrated, I don't know how many times, over and over and over again. So if you're new here, there's about 900 videos you can catch up on when you have some time. Let's see. Is it an Intel processor? Oh, you're not talking to me. Let's see. I'm just looking through the chat here for a minute before I continue. All right, so Carl said the word I was looking for is a quirk. No, it's not peeling those labels off, it's not a quirk, it's a, I'll think of the word. I was thinking of it last night. It'll come to me. David R. Registers just contributed $2. He says, thank you for being you, Carey. Well, I don't know how to be anybody else. Thanks for the contribution. It's another word for quirk, but it's more specific than the word quirk. And it's right there. I've got it. It'll come to me. Anyway, so let's fire it up. Let me show you where its current state is of operation. And I have a feeling I'm going to have to take this whole board out. Sometimes when a system comes to me that's so convoluted. The easiest thing is to just tear everything out and start over again. But especially if the motherboard's continuing to misbehave. If it continues to misbehave with a bare configuration, then it appears we're probably going to have to replace the motherboard. In all likelihood, the CPU is probably fine. Remember, I very rarely ever see a bad CPU. And even though that CPU overheated, in fact, the CPU didn't overheat. It thermal throttled. We know for a fact it's thermal throttling. We don't know how often. Like the builders, the person who owns this computer who built it said when they put the new water block on, they checked their temperatures and they were in the 30s. Well, yeah, if you're just at the desktop, it'll sit in the 30s. But the minute you make it do something, that's when your temps start to rise. It's not enough to just run a temperature sensor on it when it's idle, because it's not doing anything. Most of the cores are not even running, or it's running at 800 megahertz instead of, whatever it is. So anyway, I'm not suggesting people need to go and check their CPU temperatures unless you're diagnosing a problem. Is your computer acting funny? Is it not behaving in a way that it should? In that case, let's start monitoring some temps. I would not monitor temps if there was nothing wrong with the machine. So you'll see I monitor it on a new build. When I build a brand new computer, I want to push it hard and check its temps so I can have confidence when I hand it to the customer that whatever the customer does with it, it's going to be fine. Beyond that, it never needs those thermal monitoring programs installed ever again unless we're diagnosing a problem. Because otherwise, all you're doing is looking for a problem. I'm way too busy to have nothing else better to do than download and install some software in the hopes that I can find a problem. Because if you're not hoping to find a problem, then there's no point in you installing that software. Well, I just want to make sure everything's okay. No, everything is okay because the computer's doing everything you want it to. You already know that. So all you're doing is looking for an excuse to have a problem. And that's all well and good. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm saying I'm way too busy. Here, send me your computer and let me have it a month while I look for problems. Well, why should you have it a month looking for problems when I don't have any issues with it? Wasn't that what we're doing now? Sorry. Cracks me up. The word you're looking for is compulsion. No, it's not a compulsion. And that's from Gary Tatum, contributed $5. The word I was looking for, it's like an pet peeve or an idiosyncrasy. It's I'll think of it. It'll come to me. It's neither of those words either. Don't get me wrong, those words work. They're just not as specific as the word. Because I was thinking of it last night. I was thinking, what's the word for this? It's something unique to me that I do because it's important to me. I don't have to do it. It's not a compulsion. I do it because I choose to, because I feel it's important. And not important for the sake of the reliability of a computer, but important for the pride and the quality of workmanship that when somebody looks at it, they go, wow, that looks beautiful. And that means taking the plastic off of stuff so you can really showcase it. But it's close to being like a pet peeve. It's something that bothers me that's not really that important, but it has an issue with something that is important to me, which is the pride of it. And I'll think of the word. It'll come to me. But thank you. Everybody's trying to think of the word. It's funny. It's not an eccentricity. There's nothing eccentric about it. It's pride, but it's like a pet peeve. Bill Bowers contributed $5. Carey, I love your computer repairs. Always very interesting and informative. Thank you, Bill. It's not idiosyncrasy. That's not the. Again, these suggestions could all be used to describe it, but I can't think of the word. I want to say it was 2 words, like pet peeve. I can't think of what the phrase. It's a phrase. Anyway, it's something that's important to me, and the reason it's important to me may not be a reason that's important to you, but it doesn't make it any less important to me or any more important to you. It's not an issue of right or wrong. It's an issue of pride, right? That's basically the way I can phrase it. And everybody's still trying to find words like perfectionism, fastidious. No. OCD. It is these things, but there's another word for it, or there's two words for it. I'm just funny that way. I also noticed he's got an M.2 slot down here. I don't know how well you can see that, but he's got an M.2 right over there. Let's see if we can zoom in on that some more. So this right here is an M.2 slot that's got a adapter on it for, it's going to be one of those days today. For, that version of SATA that never really took off, it never really gained any market. What was it called? SATA Express, something like that. And so I don't know why he's got that on there, but I think that should come off, because I think you're more likely to use this M.2 slot for an M.2 drive long before you'll use a SATA Express drive. I can't think of anything today. What are they, U.2 drives or something like that? I can't remember. It's going to bother me now. I can't think of what that word is, or those words are. I need to see. This is why I need to work alone. See, now my mind is focused on that instead of focused on this, and I'm not getting anything done. Let me fire it up and you can see its current state. The other thing, I noticed he had an add-on USB 3 card here. Not that that should be a problem, but I took it out just to be sure. I took his GPU out, as I mentioned before. He's got a GTX 980 in there, and it seems to be running fine. There was a lot of dust in here. I blew it out with the leaf blower, and I disconnected the front and rear case fans because they were driving me crazy with the noise. And so there's no cooling fans running on this other than what's on the power supply. And as I mentioned, I had disconnected his power supply using my own. Didn't make any difference. So here's what I can pretty much tell you for sure. Power supply is in good condition and working. And the GPU, the graphics card, is in good condition and working. Beyond that, I don't know the status of anything else. I'm not booting off of his hard drives. I don't know what's going on there. I've got the DVD drive unplugged. I don't know what's going on there. I have I've unplugged everything down here from the front audio port. I unplugged the USB off of the water block, reseated the water block. Something's not right with it. It just won't sit right on the CPU. And the reason I know it's still not sitting right is I ran Prime 95 and it immediately went up in temperature again. Within 5 minutes, it was, at 80 degrees centigrade. On a water block like this, we shouldn't be much higher than the 70s after 15 minutes, let alone not in 5 minutes. So clearly it's still not sitting well. And I don't want to spend too much time trying to figure out why. I just want to replace it and move on to the next problem. But right now it should boot up. I've got the only drive hooked up is this drive here. It's got no power plug on it because I disconnected my power supply last night and put it away. So nothing is plugged in on this board. All of his cables are still out. And I need to plug it back in is what I'm trying to say. And that's the current state of it. So I guess I need to plug in, let's see, motherboard power will go here. I'm like all excited to plug it in and show you the behavior of the machine, and then I realized it's not ready yet. Somebody sent me that studio light. I really need to hook it up just so I can see. Forget what you guys can see. I can't see in here. It's pitch dark in this case. so I have to feel for everything. This case has front port USB 2 and front port USB 3. He sent it to me with the 3 disconnected. I don't know why. And I don't even know why he's got this add-in card, because he's already got 2 front USB 3 connectors on this board. So he had a spare one available. All he had to do was buy a little adapter to go up front, unless he wanted them in the back for some reason. The back isn't shy of USB ports, though. It looks like it's got 2, 4, 6, 7, plus a Type-C. That's 8. Plus he's got 4 up front, 2 USB 2s, 2 USB 3s. That's a total of 12. And when adding 4, that's now 16. It's pretty unusual for anybody to need that many USB ports these days, because so many things are consolidated. Printers and scanners are all in one. They're often even wireless these days. And then your keyboard and your mouse. So let's say you're plugging your printer, your keyboard, your mouse. What else do you plug in that's USB? I mean, that's 3. Mike Smith told me when I was building his computer, we were looking at motherboards, and he said, no, I can't use that board. It doesn't have enough USBs. I said, geez, Mike, how many do you need? He goes, I need 8. You need 8? What the heck? I know he's plugging in a microphone, so that's, on top of the 3 that I mentioned, that's 4. Your speakers shouldn't be plugging in USB. Maybe you're going Wi-Fi, but Mike isn't going Wi-Fi. But let's say you were, that's 5. I don't know what the heck everybody's plugging into their USB ports. They need so many of them, but anyway, I really don't understand why that was necessary, but I don't know this customer. I never met him before. He reached out to me in an email. We spoke over the phone. I wanted to understand what the problem was and whether or not I would be able to help him, and explain to him what the process is and what he can expect the costs to be. And once all that was established, everything was good, and he mailed it to me. So that's the extent of what I know about the customer and the situation. Plugging in digital cameras. Yeah, I guess you could plug in a webcam, sure, but that's 6. Oculus Rift needs 3 USB ports. Wow, holy smokes. An external sound card. Yeah, I don't think many people use those. Maybe all the USB ports don't work. No, they should all work. That's not how you fix broken USB ports. Here's the problem. If some of these USB ports don't work, they're tied into the motherboard, so that means there's something else that's probably not working on the motherboard. Or if the USB port's shorted out on the inside, that shorts the motherboard on the inside. You understand? So there's, the leg bone's connected to the hip bone. One thing affects the other. So to just put a Band-Aid on it doesn't really fix anything. It just kind of hides it, sweeps it under the rug. That, to me, is not a repair. But then I guess I'm a repair snob and proud of it. So anyway, let's see. So we plugged that power connector in. We plugged this power connector in. We need to give the SSD some juice. Yeah, we'll just borrow one of these. You can see this is a cabling nightmare. That's another reason I want to just tear the whole thing apart, do it my way, because this is frustrating to work on. One of the great things about cable management is not only does it look good, it's much, much easier for you to work on it in the future. Sooner or later, you're going to want to get in there for something. It may not be a repair. Maybe you're putting in another hard drive. Maybe you're upgrading your solid state drive to something larger. Maybe your power supply goes and you need to replace it. Maybe whatever, fill in the blank. It's not only a matter of pride, it's a matter of efficiency to get in and get out. So even the way you cable manage it is important. I mean, if you tie all your cables together in one big bundle, then no matter what you do, you have to cut the bundle and separate it all out again. But if you isolate each thing, like these are the fans to the cooler, and these are the wires to the motherboard, and then each one is bundled separately, and then they're bundled together. Then you cut the one bundle, and then you have like 5 little bundles, and then you just segment out the wires that you need without interfering with the cable management of everything else. And before you know it, you're done with the job. And all the cable management is real simple at that point, because you're only redoing that one thing you changed and then tying it back, putting all the cables back potentially in one big bundle. You're taking the separate bundles and putting them together is what I'm trying to say. And if you think about that kind of stuff when you do your cable management, it pays off for you if you're the one that's going to be working on it. So It's not always just about the looks, although primarily it is. So that being said, we've got the solid state drive plugged in. Oh, the water pump needs to be plugged in, so there's a power cable here to the block right here. And again, we'll just use another one of these, doesn't matter which one. There we go. And I unplugged the SATA cables from all the drives, because even a plugged-in SATA cable can prevent a motherboard from booting. A USB drive plugged in can prevent a motherboard from booting. So anything that's not absolutely positively required is not put in or installed, because we have to make sure the foundation is working all by itself. And so by the foundation, I'm referring to the motherboard, CPU, RAM, power supply. That's it. With a keyboard, mouse, monitor, you should be able to power up regularly and consistently without errors. At that point, once that's been established that that's working, then we can start adding the GPU back and plugging the drives back in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For all we know, anything that's not plugged in is a cause of the problem. There is no way I can say a DVD would never cause that problem, or a solid state drive would never cause that problem. There's anything that's plugged into the board is a potential suspect in this investigation until it's been cleared. So I have cleared the power supply and I have cleared the GPU. That's all I've cleared at this time. And I know that cooler, the way it's mounted, that's one shady individual. Maybe not the culprit in this investigation, but certainly a shady individual that needs to go. So we're going to take it out of the equation. But let me show you what it's doing. I think we're ready to power it up. I need to get a power cable plugged in, which I have right here. Is it going to reach? There we go. Let's get this out of the way. I need an HDMI cable. That'll go up here onto the motherboard. And the other end will go back here into the capture card. So of course I can use your monitors, you guys watching at home. Keyboard and mouse, that's the last thing. So here's my keyboard and mouse. This is available on Amazon. Same with this little rotating table. All of that's in my Amazon store. In the link below the video, there's a bunch of video notes. So if you guys want to know where I get the screwdrivers, or where I get this turning table, or this keyboard and mouse combo that runs off the one dongle, all of that is listed in the Amazon store. And if you use my link to go to the Amazon store, and you literally purchase anything, regardless if it's the thing that took you to Amazon, the fact that my link took you to Amazon means I'll make a small commission off anything you purchased during that browser visit. You don't pay any more. It doesn't cost you any different. And it's a great way to show support for the channel. If you're going to buy it anyway, you know, help a brother out. So I'm going to flip the switch on, and let's get you over to camera 2. I'll tell you, one of the things I'm looking forward to when I get a studio is I can put a green screen behind me, so that when I do this, when I grab my camera 1, which is what you're watching now, and shrink it down into the corner, it could just be me standing there on top of the Windows desktop instead of what this is. Like if I had green behind me, it would just be this, it would just be me standing on the Windows desktop. So we're going to get there. I'm having ideas. That's dangerous. So what no signal, if you ever see your screen say no signal, that means it's not being fed any video information. It'd be like a TV without an antenna hooked up. There's nothing coming in. So your monitor is working. A lot of customers, they call me and say, you know, my monitor's bad. I go, why? Because it says no signal. No, that's your monitor working, telling you there's nothing for it to display. It's not being fed any information. Sometimes this is a difficult thing to explain. I've been trying to think of another phrase for this that customers may better understand. Because this is a screen I can change on the capture card, and I've decided to leave it like this as no signal. But it's basically saying your monitor works, but there's nothing for me to display. Sort of like if you turn off your cable box and turn your TV on, your TV will just probably display a blank screen. I know mine does until the cable box comes on. Well, instead of a blank screen, which often days looks like the monitor is off, and people go, oh, it won't turn on, the monitor comes on and it says, no signal. I am working, but you're not giving me anything to show you. So that means whatever you've plugged into the screen is not turned on or not working. So when you see no signal, I just want to make sure you interpret that correctly. Let's fire it up. Enough chit chat. You'll see the lights just going on the pump. Let's get you zoomed in. You see it says overclock 15%. This machine is not overclocked. There's nothing overclocked in it. And I reset the BIOS and upgraded the BIOS. And it's still saying there's a 15% overclock, which makes no sense to me because as far as I know, it's not overclocked at all. So this is a fresh install of Windows 10. Now, because this had Windows 10 Pro before, apparently, I didn't enter any product key. I install this the same way I always install Windows 10, which I've shown here numerous times. And when I connected to the internet, you'll see it automatically activated Windows. You don't have to have a Microsoft account, is what I'm telling you. Microsoft recognizes this machine on the network. It knows this motherboard and hardware, and it said, oh yeah, you've activated this before, and it reactivated it without me doing anything at all. And that's by me installing Windows 10, and during the installation process, when Windows 10 asks me if I have a product key, it doesn't ask me, it says to enter it, you always see me click the fine print at the bottom of the screen that I don't have a product key. And that way, if a customer did install Windows before, it's got to be the same version. You know, if it was Windows 10 Home, it would not have activated with Windows 10 Pro. But you can see right there, Windows is activated. I don't know the customer's product key. I didn't ask for it. It just happened automatically. And I think that's one of the best features of Windows 10 right there. We can see the RAM we've got installed, etc., the current status. You can see the utility software I ran last night is still there. And I had Crystal Disk info and some other stuff here in the recycle bin that I ran on the machine so that I'm not withholding any information from you. This is my full disclosure because I wasn't able to film it. So you can see it boots up regularly now, but I'm still getting that 15% overclock, which doesn't make any sense. If we look at what happens when the motherboard is booting, if I bring the camera down, you'll see there's a red diagnostic LED, which I find to be a complete waste of my time. Let me get the camera to focus on that. Right there, it says 40. See where it says 40? Right here? When I shut the machine off, let's just go to restart. So we go here, go to shutdown, restart. Watch this diagnostic LED as it goes through the processes of initialization or power on self-test. Sometimes it stops at 4F. There's our 15% overclock announcement again, which is really strange. And it boots pretty good, you know, for a system that's, what, 3 or 4 years old. It runs, yeah, I'll call it 3 years old. That's the status of the machine now. So at least it's booting up now, which it wasn't doing before. So maybe something I unplugged, or maybe those front port umbilicals being on vertically instead of horizontally could have been causing it. I don't know, but it's still not right. It's still saying there's a 15% overclock when there isn't. And like I said, sometimes that stops at 4F. Like if I put all 4 memory modules in it, I think it'll never post, I'm pretty sure. So I think we have either a bad motherboard or a bad CPU. I don't know. At this point, I don't know yet, is what I should say. But I will know. I shall know. Let's get this zoomed out a little bit. Aim it up. There we go. Okay. Everybody with me? Archie the dog says, clear the CMOS. I've already cleared the CMOS. I pulled the battery out of it, replaced the battery, reset the BIOS, and even updated the BIOS, which again resets it, and then went into the BIOS and loaded the optimal defaults, which is setting everything back to stock, and it still comes up and says 15% overclock. So that's all the basic stuff, guys. That's already been done. Could it be a 15% overclock on the memory? No, because all of that's been turned off. XMP was turned on when I received the machine, and I turned that off. Because again, when you're diagnosing the system, you don't want to diagnose with XMP turned on. You don't want fast boot enabled. You do not want an overclock. Once everything is running and stable, then you can mess around with that stuff. But oftentimes it's that stuff that causes the machine to become unstable. So we remove that from the equation, but it won't remove. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I don't think the machine is actually overclocked at all. I don't think the CPU is a 15% overclock. If we check it right now, let's see, let's grab my utilities, plug this in, and then let's grab CPU-Z off of here, and we can take a look at what the performance of the CPU is right now. PC testing software, CPU-Z, let's drag that out. And if the CPU is overclocked, it should show it to us. Core speed is at, well, it showed 4,000. Right here, Intel Core i7 at 4 gigahertz. I think that's the stock speed, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look up the specs, but I'm pretty sure that's the stock speed. The memory should also be running at stock speed. Nothing should be overclocked here. Yeah, it's 2400, right? So 1200 DDR, double data rate. So that'd be 2400. It says DDR4 2132. Shows it's 2666 on the XMP side of things. So, yeah, I'm not showing this as overclocked at all. You see, when the CPU isn't working very hard, when it's idling, it's only running 800 megahertz. But when we give it a job to do, like if I grab Prime 95 and turn that on, now you'll see that ramp up, and you'll see it's hitting 4,600. So the question is, what are the stock and turbo speeds, the stock turbo speed of an i7 6700K? Because that's a couple years ago. Let me stop this because I know it's going to get hot. Check that it's not a custom splash screen. I know it's not a custom splash screen because it doesn't do it all the time. Sometimes it'll boot up and say it's not a 15% overclock. Sometimes it comes up and just says ASUS like it's supposed to. So they're saying it is overclocked. Interesting. The max turbo is 4.2. Okay, good to know. Thank you, guys. John Yasuda joins us and contributes $20. He says, this is a great repair so far. Have some pizza and chicken wings on me when you're done. Right on, John. I think I will. Thank you for that. It pains me. I've ordered some RAM for for 3 computers. And the RAM I ordered is the Trident RGB memory that looks like it's got little diamonds in it. It's $170 for 2 sticks of 16 gigs each, so 32 gig kit. Thready will need 4 of those. So I want to pull the RAM out of Thready because the RAM I've got in there doesn't seem to be compatible with the motherboard as far as turning on basically what XMP. And I'm only using 4 of the slots. I've decided I'm going to max thready out, and that's going to take 8 memory modules. So I'm going to put 8 16 gig memory modules in it. So that's 4 packages of memory right there, 4 pairs. Then I decided I'm going to do the same thing on Nuka-Cola. The Nuka-Cola build has 4 memory slots, so that's 2 pairs. And then I'm going to use the same memory on the Zynos build, which is a micro ATX board and only has 2 memory slots. So that's 1 pair. So 7 pairs of memory at $170. I spent $1,200 on RAM last night. It was hard to hit that buy now button, add to cart, because I was like, you sure you want to do this? It's really overkill. And I thought, it's going to get a lot of views. People are going to like it. They'll drool over it. I'll do it. So I pulled the trigger on it. And then the memory I'm currently using in Thready and Nuka-Cola, that will be repurposed into another build somewhere down the line. So that's something coming up here on the channel very soon. That was painful. That was really painful. And the motherboard, the Maximus Gene 11, is the micro ATX board I'm going to use on the Xenos build. It has, you can put up to 4 NVMe drives, M.2 NVMe drives in it. And if I put 4 Samsung 970 2 terabyte drives in it to put a RAID just to test it, that's $1,600. So I don't think I'm going to do that. I have this hunch that that board will perform better than, say, a regular Socket 1151 board, because we've already proven that putting NVMe in a RAID 0 configuration actually slows it down on a regular motherboard. But what about on a $400 motherboard, which is what this Maximus 11 Gene board is from Asus? It's a $389 motherboard. And I'm curious if putting that in a RAID 0 configuration will actually result in more performance, because we are limited by the number of lanes. So I'll get more into that. That's another project running around the back of my head, and we'll explore that when the time comes. But I don't have $1,600 laying around to just buy drives for an experiment. But that's today. Maybe between now and then, certainly I could at least get 2, because if it's not going to run any faster with 2, it certainly isn't going to run any faster with more than 2. Slow Death says 4.6 gigahertz from 4 gigahertz is exactly 15%. Well, the good news is the BIOS is not lying to us, but I don't understand why the BIOS is defaulting to a 15% overclock unless there's a switch on the motherboard that's been physically moved. On this particular board, I have not pulled the user's manual up to look to see that it's got a number of little toggle switches on it, and it'll be interesting to see if those switches have been moved from their default position and if they do any of that. Carey, disable multi-core enhancement in the BIOS. What's interesting to me is I've worked on Asus boards countless times before, and the only time I've ever seen the overclock information appear at boot up is when you've gone in and changed it. When you reset the BIOS to default values, it should not be in an overclock position. So there's something not right on this board, or there's something wrong with the CPU during the post that's causing the board to misread it. I don't believe I should have to disable anything in the BIOS, because the BIOS was completely reset numerous times. But I just missed a contribution, so let me give a shout out here. Rusty Nails contributed $20. Everyone sends Christmas wishes. Here is my Hanukkah gift. This is one of your better videos so far. What are you saying? My other videos suck? No, thank you for the contribution. Rusty Nail, I appreciate that very much. And here's my Christmas gift back to you. Here's my Hanukkah gift back to you. You're a moderator now. See that? Mazel tov. And thank you. Does Scythe offer a cooler for the Threadripper? I don't know, and I don't care for my Threadripper, or I should say for the community's Threadripper, because I want the RGB. And I saw that, I think it was Dark Rock, somebody's got a cooler that has RGB on it, but the fans are molded in as part of the cooler. You can't just change the fans if they ever die. So that immediately turned me off. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. A tower cooler with RGB bands on it. Like it's two little bands. You guys probably know which cooler I'm talking about. I never saw it before. I stumbled onto a video on YouTube that showed it as part of an option to consider for old Freddy there. And yeah, that's not going to work for me. I need something that I can fix, you know. So in the meantime, I got to address the noise issues with Ready. And now you got me talking about something entirely off topic. So let me try and reel it back in here, guys. I hate the idea of ignoring the chat room, and then when I address the chat room, you guys take me completely off topic, and they go, how come it takes you so long to get anything done? Because I keep allowing myself interruptions, because I like to include you guys, because you're hanging out with me, you know? I don't want to ignore you. That's what TV is for. Planet Cryos has contributed $25. He says, I'm not contributed in some time, so here's a little Christmas gift, Carey. Well, thank you, of course. And for your continued support of the channel. I appreciate that. It's guys like you, those who are contributing, that make it possible for me to avoid sponsorship. So I don't have to sit here and tell you about this new XYZ product. If I tell you I like a product, I'm not getting paid for it. It's because I genuinely rely on the product that I put my reputation on for my business and the sustainability of my business. If I'm pushing a product that's crap, it's going to cost me in customer confidence and in warranty labor repair, which will put me right out of business. So if I'm telling you I run a business and these are the parts I use, I don't care if you want to buy it or not. I really don't care. I'm just answering questions I know I'm going to get. Hey, what cooler is that? What motherboard is that? Why did you use that? How come you don't use these others? I use where I know there is good support, good value for money, and a product that's very reliable. There's always exceptions. It doesn't mean the products never break. It means that in the rare occasion they do, I'm choosing companies where I know if I have a problem, they will help me. They will get me a solution. They won't look for excuses and tell me why they're not going to honor the warranty. Because then, when you're self-employed like I am, I have no choice but to buy another part for that customer to replace it. Or tell the customer, sorry, motherboard manufacturer won't replace it, so I won't replace it. Either way, I'm screwed, because I don't make that much money on a build, and certainly any money I will have made will be in the negative on one in-warranty repair. Not to mention the damage it does to the reputation, the customer's confidence. It's irreparable. So that's why I choose the parts I use. So when you hear me talk positively about a product, I'm not getting paid by anybody. I drink Coke because I like Coke. God forbid. So much conspiracy theory out there. I wish. So when I'm broadcasting to you from my mansion in my guest house near the third swimming pool, then you can put your conspiracy theories in when I tell you there's no sponsors. But in the meantime, you can see the way I live. It's pretty clear. If I'm getting sponsors, I'm getting ripped off. Let's see. Steve Devine says Scythe has the TUF Amazon Tough Alliance Gaming Alliance RGB air cooler that supports the Asus Aura Sync. Now that doesn't mean it won't work on other boards, but they specifically designed its color and its compatibility with the Asus Tough series. So the reason the screen says no signal, which I just caught, is because the computer fell asleep. And when the computer falls asleep, it puts the screen into standby mode. That means it stops sending a signal out to your monitor. And then that little green light on your monitor will often turn amber. It's like a low power standby mode until it receives a signal. So anyway, sorry I didn't catch that earlier. Now, this is the current status of the machine. This is how it's running. If we pull the temperature up on this, just to kind of look at where the temperatures have been residing while we've been, this has been on for a while, we can see the maximum and minimum temperatures on, let's see, where is it? Let's bring up the hardware monitor program. This is a free program you can download. I always grab portable versions of software that don't have to be installed. There's something catching on the bottom of this mouse. Where is it? I can feel it. It's driving me crazy. I will find you. All right, it looks like so far since we started the hardware monitor, the temps, even 43C sitting at idle seems a little bit high for a liquid-cooled machine that's not doing much. I would expect it to be down in the upper 20s, mid 30s. So it's still, obviously, that water block is not sitting flush. That's very obvious to me. Should be obvious to you as well. So what I need to do, so you guys are caught up. I spent all this time catching you up. Hopefully we're all on the same page. Hopefully you're joining me now. You understand my situation, the scenario that I'm dealing with, and now we can proceed. So let's go ahead and shut this back down. You know what, let's take a look at the BIOS real quick now that I think about it. Sorry guys, I gotta make the screen bigger for me so I can see. Let's do a restart again, and let's go into the BIOS. So when it comes back up, I'm gonna hit F2. I think on this motherboard it's F2 or delete. Why is that overclock at 15%? That's crazy. And of course, the machine will run even faster if it wasn't overclocked. Cooler. The machine would run cooler. That was the stupidest thing I've ever said. It'll run faster if we don't overclock it. No, I meant to say it'll run cooler if we don't overclock it. So let's go to advanced mode, F7. And let's see, there's the AI tweaker. Target CPU mode frequency, AI overclock tuner manual. It should be, I would say, auto. Yeah, that switch is on the trusted platform on 2. I don't know why. DRAM timing, everything should just be set to auto. So what I do is I go over here to exit, and I say I want to load optimize defaults, and click OK. Now that should reset the BIOS back to factory. So now when I say save changes and reset, it should show me everything it just changed. So everything here is what it just put back to its previous setting to the new setting, right? The previous setting, new setting. That's everything that changed. Then I hit OK. Now what was happening before is the machine would not save. Apparently, like when I hit this, it just won't start up again. It just stays like this until the machine is powered off. So I'm going to give it a minute because the diagnostic LED is running. And right now it's the little diagnostic LED down at the bottom of there. So it's at 35, 45, 37, 39, 52, 22, 4F, 60. Well, maybe it's going to boot. Let's see. It's taking a long time. It's on B6. All right. Now it's still going. Still going. It's on 21, 4C, 3E, 3A, 32. Why is this taking so long? 3.5, 3C, 3.9, 22. I see lights going on and off the motherboard. There's a red LED on the left side. Holy smokes, it's back to an overclock of 15% again. What the heck is going on? It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. TPU is the turbo processing. It's not the trust. Oh, I'm thinking of TPM. I was thinking of the trusted platform module, not TPU. See? Thank you. Thank you for catching me on that. So I have an idea. Let's roll this back. Let's roll this back to Let's shut it down, and I'm going to move that TPU switch back over. So one of the issues I run into, I've been doing this for nearly 30 years. And in 30 years, we've done everything from VISA to IDE and, a little tail end of MFM and RLL. And I've got to be honest, the older I get and the more this new technology comes out, it gets a lot easier for me to forget something I don't see every day. No one is an island. Nobody knows everything. So one of the reasons I make these videos live is to show the real process and what's going on. I think too many people watch highly polished, edited, and scripted videos, and they expect perfection. That's not realistic. And anybody who expects that, I want to see your videos. I would love to see yours. So if you appreciate what I'm doing here, it's the reality. It's what you often don't see in video because people don't want to embarrass themselves. I don't have a problem embarrassing myself as long as we can all learn from it and we're not making the same mistakes, over and over again. It benefits the entire community. So I just want to address that real quick. Now, as far as this goes, there's a switch on the motherboard for the TPU, not TPM. Yeah, I'm so hooked on the terminology used with the technology. It can often overlap and be very similar. So I think this TPM is something unique to ASUS. I'm not that familiar with their product line. I've never seen it on any other board before. So that's why you guys had to tell me what that is, and I appreciate it because, again, I haven't reached the point of opening the manual yet. And normally I don't have to. Normally these machines are so similar that it's just a matter of, finding a wire in the wrong place or a setting that's incorrect. But to have something, hold on a minute, guys. Okay. So the turbo processing unit, thanks, that's what that is, TPU. Do any other motherboard manufacturers have something called TPU? Because I've never seen that before. And if it was something on a Z170 board, generally speaking, I don't move any of the switches. Most boards don't even have switches. I don't move them. So because I'm not moving them, because I keep everything stock for reliability reasons, I don't set any settings over and above the stock settings. So I don't know where those switches are supposed to be. There's 3 switches down here at the bottom. And I'll show them to you. We'll take a look. And then maybe one of you out there, we'll include you in this repair. Maybe you guys can help guide me and we can do this together. Because I'm just too lazy to look in the manual. Give it a minute to focus. Okay, so we have three switches down here. We've got boot device, LED, EPU, and then TPU 1 and 2. You see that switch for TPU can be moved. I think it's got 3 positions, yeah. We turn that off. And I'll leave these other ones on. No idea. I have absolutely no idea what that does. Never been an issue ever that I've had in the past. So let's see, we'll go back to camera 2. Let's see if the machine will turn on. So it's cycling through the diagnostic LEDs now. And I'm very curious if our post screen will still say overclock 15%. Ah, it went away. That went away. That's what was causing it. All right. Valuable lesson here. Let me come back to Camera 1. Oh, and I'm way zoomed in. Get to see my shirt. Okay, so my new shirt for Christmas. Do you like it? Guess we can zoom in a little bit more and bring this down a little bit. Give me just a minute. There we go. Okay, let's talk about this for a minute because this is a new experience for me. I've never had a customer that I'm aware of move switches on the board unless they specifically knew what they were doing. I don't move those switches on the board, and I'll tell you why, if I haven't made it perfectly clear by now. I want everything running stock at all times. If I'm going to support you, I can't spend hours and hours of free labor helping you overclock your machine and deal with all the blue screens and all the errors until you find the right balance. Leave it alone. Like, rather than overclock this machine, you could buy a brand new CPU today that's probably only 15% faster, but I was going to say much faster, but it really isn't. The last couple generation of CPUs aren't that much faster from this one. But if it's important to you to get to 4.6, then let's just throw a 9900 KS in a socket Z390 motherboard and move your RAM over, and now you're running at 5 gigahertz across all 8 cores. Better than any overclock you'll ever get, and that's stock out of the box on a 9900 KS. That's completely stock. And what that means is it's been tested, it's been punished and hammered. And in fact, it could probably safely go a bit above that, because in order for it to run stock across all the cores at 5 gigahertz, it's got to have some headroom on it for heat. That being said, it makes no sense to me why somebody will spend all this money on excessive cooling options to go 10 or 15% faster. Like, I don't get it. I absolutely don't get it. When the cost of that 10 or 15% faster results in an unstable system, or a system that requires, like I said, an exotic and expensive cooling, or any sort of liquid cooling, in my opinion, is exotic. You don't go into a business, you don't go into a corporation. I challenge you, wherever you live, go downtown. Go into one of the high-rise buildings, enter any company, and I challenge you to find a computer with RGB, liquid cooling, or overclocking. You're highly unlikely going to find that in the real world. This is something hobbyists and enthusiasts do. And it's great when you're the one having to fix it. When you create your own voluntary problems because you're messing around with stuff, because you're watching some YouTube videos where these guys go, well, let's overclock this and see how fast we can get it to go. And it's highly polished and edited so you don't see all the errors and you don't live with it every day. So just because it worked on video for 20 minutes doesn't mean 3 weeks later it's still running, and they often don't follow up. It's a disconnect from reality. But if you're willing to endure that sort of frustration, have at it. And if you want to run a business doing that, good luck. I hope you plan on giving away a lot of work for free, because customers aren't going to keep paying you $100 an hour to keep coming back over to their house until you figure out how to make the thing run stable. You know how you make it run stable for sure with no doubts? Keep it at stock. And if that's not fast enough, put a faster storage drive in it. Put more RAM in it. Change the CPU to something faster. That's the way you do it responsibly. This is called fun, but it's not fun anymore when you have to send it to somebody and ask them to fix it for you. That means it's gotten from fun to frustrating, and it costs you a lot of money in the process. Now, and I want to emphasize, I have never seen, let me rephrase, clearly I have worked on ASUS Z170 boards before, and somewhere in my history, some of those boards have that TPU switch. They also have a TPM. Getting all defensive. And regardless, I don't touch it. The way it comes out of the box is the way you're supposed to leave it, unless you're knowledgeable enough and brave enough and have enough time on your hands to mess around with it. All right. Thank you, by the way, in the chat room for your help. I was looking at that, and all I was thinking was Trusted Platform Module, TPM. and this is an issue where when you see something over and over and over again, I keep seeing TPM over and over and over again, or it was for a long time, that I wasn't looking at it closely enough to identify the U. I mean, I clearly saw it was a U, but I just was thinking M, trusted platform. I was really looking at the TP. And I thought, well, maybe there's something on that switch. Maybe there's a switch somewhere on this board that's overriding no matter how I set the BIOS. It's the only thing that makes any sense. Well, now with your help, we know what that is. And because I have learned it this way in front of 1,500 people, I will remember it. That's the good thing about the School of Hard Knocks, is the tuition can be kind of expensive, but the lessons tend to stay with you for a long time. I don't know everything. I don't claim to know everything. And sometimes we get people in the chat room who come in and it kind of upsets me because they want to tell me how to do something that was clearly obvious. And other times in the chat room, not as often, but often enough, many of you tell me exactly what I need to know, but I can't differentiate the people blowing hot air from the people who are people I should be listening to. So that's why I get resistant when I see some of this. I'm just shaking my head, but I knew something was up. I'm like, what's that TPU? Now, without the camera running, what would have probably happened is I would have eventually gone to the manual and looked up what all the switches do to make sure they're back to the, find out. I don't even care what the switches do. I just want to know what position were the switches in when it came out of the box. I don't need to spend that much time learning it. I just need it up and running. And I need everything back to defaults in order to, verify the diagnostic procedure. So because I'm not the one who built it, because I'm not the one who had it, I don't know if those switches were moved or not. So I need a point of reference. So again, I thank you guys, because this is a community. This isn't supposed to just be me lecturing to you, although that's mostly what it is. But I appreciate that feedback, especially when it's really helpful, and I get that in return. I'm richer for the experience. I'm more knowledgeable for the experience, and I got there quicker because of your help. So thank you guys. Is that a cute lion in the background? Well, his name's Lyle. You're close. Now, I don't know if the customer hit that switch with intention, or if they were experimenting with it to see what it does or what it could do, and then they forgot. They could have hit that switch 3 years ago, and if I ask him today, he might say, I don't remember. I don't know, and it doesn't matter. We're not here to insult or belittle or otherwise think anything negative of the customer. What we're here to do is to share real-world technical work with you. So if you want to become a technician, these are the kind of things and the kind of work and the kind of challenges you should be able to reasonably expect in the line of work if you choose that line of work. That's the point of showing it to you. It's not to embarrass anybody. It's not to make anybody feel bad. And if that's what you're getting from this, that's not what this is. Change your perspective on it. Look at it from another set of eyes. My set of eyes is there's not enough YouTube channels out there that realistically show what real repair is like, the kind of systems customers bring. There's not enough YouTube channels out there that follow up with initial reviews to see how something is working over time. You have something for 2 weeks and you're going to recommend it based on having it for 2 weeks. And what happens if your recommendation is crap? Nothing, because you have no liability, no accountability, and no responsibility. So I want you to keep that in mind when you're watching YouTube videos, and especially ones where they don't have the guts just do it live on camera. I think there's a certain amount of madness to endure the abuse from the public to go live and show mistakes. But if you want to show reality, life is filled with mistakes. I'm pretty sure I'm one of them. I have to ask my parents. But that's okay. It's nothing to make fun of or to tease. It's not blatant ignorance. It's kind of an exciting exploration. And when a customer sends me a system I've never seen before that's not working, I get excited that I get to figure this puzzle out, right? So that little switch, it's kind of exciting. It's like, wow, look, I know what that does now. And because of the way I learned it, I won't soon forget it, right? If I had just done that last night on my own, I thought, I'll have to try to remember that. I won't have to try to remember this because I'm expected, you guys, most viewers, expect me to know everything. You expect there to be some kind of perfect editing, perfect lighting, perfect audio, no mistakes, perfect speech, never misspeak, no interruptions. Well, that's not what we do here because that is not realistic to life. And none of you have a perfect life. So go ahead and attack me if you want, but I think you're missing the point if you are. I'm already hearing the voices. I'm already hearing this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Of course I don't know what I'm doing. If I knew what I was doing, this would have been fixed in 2 minutes. It's a process of diagnostics to figure it out that figures out what needs to be done. I don't know what needs to be done yet. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I think I got that off my chest. Slowdeath says that switch near TPU named EPU stands for Energy Processing Unit that makes the CPU idle with less power consumption, but it's not switched on by default. See, I don't even care. Maybe you want to reset it to factory default. Well, that's what I do care about. If any of these switches are not where they were from the factory, I want them all put back to the factory standard. So, are you guys telling me that the EPU switch is in the wrong position? Let's get a zoom in on it. Let's take a look at it again. Let's take a look at all 3 switches. Let's bring the camera down a little bit. Let's go up. And again, I don't give a rat's behind what these do. I don't care. It doesn't do any point in me learning this unless I've got a corporate client that has 100 of these and we're custom configuring them. I'm never going to see this board again, or I won't see one very often. So I don't want to memorize this particular motherboard because I have different motherboards from MSI, Gigabyte, ASRock. I deal with every single day. So anything that's proprietary or unique, I don't care about. I don't care to learn it. I just want it back to default. So EPU is moved to the right and boot device LED is also moved to the right. So my question is, for those of you who know, where is the default position for these switches? Should they all be to the left? Let me shut the machine down. I'm watching the fans to see if it's shutting down. Fans are still spinning. Why are the fans still spinning? Let me go back to, is that not shutting off? There it goes. Okay. Okay, so it's turned off right now. Hold on a second, the camera will focus. I keep walking in front of the camera. He clearly switched all of the switches. They are all to the left by default based on the manual. That's from Slowdeath 007. Now there's nothing we're going to hurt by playing with them. We'll move them all to the left. Okay. Thank you for saving me the time and the effort of downloading the manual and checking it. I want to remind you that how I work when I'm alone is very different than how I work when I'm on camera. So I eventually would have had to have downloaded the manual to check that, and if I can trust what they're saying in the chat room, everything goes to the left. And usually I know when numerous people in the chat repeat it. So it looks like everything goes to the left. So with that being said, and Steve Devine has confirmed it, and a couple others. Jonathan Mayberry just contributed 10 pounds. He says, I'm going to attack you with 10 pounds. Thank you, Jonathan. I needed that. All right. So let's fire it back up. And let's go back to camera 2. and I want to see no more overclock on the post screen, and it's not there. Very good. Oh, it's working. All right. Couple other things. That's beautiful. I love it. That's great. Let's go ahead and shut it back down. Shut her down. And back to camera 1. Okay. And again, thanks to you guys. I love this. I love the fact that you guys are able to participate and help me. We need more videos like this. I want more videos. It would be really cool if you take the trolls out of the equation to just have maybe one video I'll do where I will follow your diagnostic instructions. I'll just say, here's a computer, here's the symptoms, tell me what to do first. And then what I'll do is I'll look through the comments, ignore the trolling comments of the people that are like, set it on fire, blow it up, shoot it, type format C colon. We'll get rid of those hilarious out-of-the-box thinkers, and we'll focus on the guys in the chat room and the gals, the people in the chat room that are sincere about, check this. And then I will do exactly what you say, and we'll see. And I will offer no input or suggestion. I will just simply follow the suggestions in the chat, and we'll see how long it takes to diagnose and repair it. Because if that turns out to be a faster way to work, I can make a lot of money. I have to start writing checks. All right, let's get this changed a little bit here. You know what? In fact, let's get on that. Which way do I want to go? Let's go this way. I'm going to take this cooler off of here. So I'm going to start by unplugging the fans. This cooler's got to come off. The radiator's got to come out. And we've got power on here somewhere. Let's get the power disconnected. Okay. Good. So I'm going to take the block off. When you zoom the camera in, it needs a lot of light, and there's barely any light for me, so I'm going to just pull that back a little bit. And when I pull this off, expect to see that thermal material is not seating correctly based on the temperatures we're seeing. We know that that's still an issue. Yep. So the whole center of the block still has untouched thermal compound right down the middle. So it looks like I did a little bit better of a job seating it, but it's still not seating flush. And we can still read the CPU. The thermal compound should be covering like a coat of paint. It should be covering that CPU. So you can't see that it's silver, let alone read anything on it. So we had good contact up here, but very little contact at the bottom, and the entire middle is completely free of any thermal compound. Plus, it was running overclocked at 15%, which I'm sure wasn't helping matters. Maybe it helped me to discover the block wasn't seated right, because maybe it would have never gotten that hot that quick running at stock speeds. And I would have said, well, it's within the tolerance of temperatures. But when I saw it go up like it did, as fast as it did, I said, well, that cooler is clearly not working. And I'm grabbing onto the pipes to see if I can feel them vibrate. You should be able to sort of feel the fluid moving through them. Anyway. Let's get the radiator out of here. See, I'm done with that flash drive. Let's take this off. Flip the power supply to the off position, which is something I should have done before I started working. And I got to get up here and get these screws out of the radiator. This should be interesting. Where's Mitch when I need him? Mitch is tall. So that grinding sound, that's the clutch inside of the screwdriver, that the screws are so tight, it's hitting the clutch mechanism. It's not stripping the screws or anything like that. This is a really nice driver. This is the Milwaukee M4, which is perfect for computer work. And if I change the clutch setting on it to like, we crank it all the way up, for example, it won't do that anymore. It'll just rip these screws right out of there with nary a complaint, just like that. I just got to make sure to set it back before I tighten them down, or I'll rip the heads right off the screws. Let's see. Cannot see. We took out those. Oh, there's one right there. All right, we'll keep one in each corner. I want to take all the screws out except one in each corner to prevent the radiator from falling. When I start getting to the last screw, I'm going to have to put my hand under it to catch it, or it will completely fall, damage the radiator. It could hit the ram on the way down. It's another reason it would make sense to lay this case flat so you can see, and so that way when you do unscrew it, the radiator just kind of falls sideways. It doesn't fall completely the distance of the case. But if I did that, you wouldn't be able to see much, which wouldn't make for the best viewing. I suppose watching it fall would be kind of fun if it wasn't yours. Wouldn't be fun for me or my customer, but it might be fun for you to watch. I can't even see this screw. I'll just feel for it. There it is. And then let's take this corner out. Now, when I take out this corner, it's going to start to droop. And there should just be one screw left right up here in this corner. Yep, there's only one left. It's right here. And then I've got to hold this so that it doesn't come crashing down. Ta-da! Magnetized screwdrivers, got the screw on the end and the washer. All right. This, you can see the thermal compound right down the middle is still the way it came from the factory. It still has the same texture bumps on it as fresh out of the box. That ain't right. I don't know which model cooler this was. I was trying to look up, maybe the owner of the computer can tell me or you guys will recognize it. I thought this was an H110 or maybe an H115 RGB, but I can't find any online, and I just did a cursory look online, that have a back plate that looks like this one. This back plate, well, I've shown you a picture of it. On all the Corsair documentation I've been looking at shows more of an X-shaped back plate. This is a completely different back plate. I'm starting to wonder if he reused the back plate. Like, I'm wondering, here's what I'm thinking. He told me he had a liquid cooler that died. Is it possible he just bought the new cooler, took the old cooler off, but left the back plate and standoffs on and reused? You know, why change it out? I'm just taking a cooler off and putting another cooler on. But if he bought a different model of cooler, even if it's from the same manufacturer, then that would explain why it's not sitting right, that he doesn't have the right back plate on it. I wonder if that's what he did. Because I can't find any documentation that shows that back plate that looks like this in this shape. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist or that he swapped it. It could mean I'm not looking up the right model. So I will ask you guys for your help in identifying what model of cooler this is from Corsair and what the enclosed back plate with that model looks like and if it matches what we have. Because if it doesn't match, I know why it's not sitting right. If it does match, well, then I'm just back to speculation. So here's the back plate that was used. So what I want to know is this the back plate that came with that cooler, or is this the back plate that came with the cooler he had prior, and he simply swapped out the block and radiator, thinking he would save a few minutes of time? They say that black, so John Craig says this back plate is from an older model H100i. Okay, but what do we have? What cooler is it we have now? So again, this is not to embarrass or belittle anybody. This is to learn from. If you're thinking of doing that, don't do that. There's a reason why the parts come enclosed. The only time you can reuse older parts is if you're buying the exact same model purchased within the same time frame, because they revise these models. It may still be an H100i, but they could have revision 2, revision 3. They may not even publicly announce that they've changed some of the enclosed parts for numerous reasons regarding reliability or ease of installation, or even issues of trademark infringement, as we've seen a lot in the liquid cooling arena, right? So I'm very curious about where this came from and what model cooler we have. Yeah, so initially I was thinking maybe he used the wrong standoffs, but these are familiar to me. Sorry, I've got the wrong video feed up here. Hold on a second. These standoffs are familiar to me with Corsair. They appear to be correct, but that backplate does not match any of the documentation, and I will have to ask the customer. Oh yeah, they said don't forget about the screwdriver. You're right, I need to turn this clutch setting down. I always put the clutch on, see right now it's on drill, which is just full power. I put it on all the way down to 3, which should be between 2 and 4. All right, okay. I'm all excited. Got a lot of energy today. My energy drink is working. What is all this? Does this have a built-in fan controller? Why? What the heck? This is a cable management mess, and that doesn't help. I think I'm going to take this U2 adapter out of it, because I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Come on, that was funny. So this little adapter came out with the standoff attached to it, and that's what happens if you don't tighten your standoffs down before putting the screw in. But I wanted the standoff in anyway, because what I want to do is I'm going to put the standoff in the 2280 position with the screw in it. So if the customer wants to add an M.2 drive in the future, it'll be ready for them. They won't have to worry, where did the screw go? It's a little teeny tiny screw, very difficult to find. All these standoffs are 5mm in size. The same thing as the motherboard standoff. So I have a 5mm socket dedicated just for that purpose. So we can put it on there, and then I can take the screw out. Like so. Little teeny tiny screw. That's why it's so good to have a magnetized screwdriver, because you don't want to drop it. It'll be hard to find. They're not exactly easy to find at a hardware store either. So this, yeah, little adapter, again, it's proprietary ASUS stuff. It's one of the reasons I don't like ASUS is they like to make up their own stuff. Sometimes the stuff they make up sticks. Like ASUS started putting metal reinforced PCI Express slots, and then everybody else started to do it. Gigabyte followed, and everybody else. So some of the stuff ASUS explores other manufacturers copy, and Asus likes to brag they're the first. But the problem with being the first is they also have a lot of stuff they try that doesn't work out. Like Asus couldn't have known that this U.2 wasn't going to take off. And they invested in the engineering and development of these parts that you pretty much can't find a drive that plugs in there if you wanted to. Certainly, at the price and performance of NVMe, it doesn't make any sense to explore that anymore. And Asus can say, yeah, well, we were the first. Yeah, well, you were also the last. So that's one of the issues I have with Asus. If you want to experiment and guinea pig, do that yourself. Don't turn your customers into guinea pigs. And that's what Asus likes to do. Sorry. I mean, they make a good product, but sometimes they don't know when to quit. There's a reason why we have industry standards. And Asus has actually had an impact on the industry standards. Like I say, on the high-end motherboards, to have that metal reinforced PCI Express slot, or to have surface mount Intel NICs is something Asus was really pushing and driving for. And now everybody else does it. And Asus likes to point out, we were the first, everybody's copying us. But they also are not so quick to point out all the things they did that never caught on, and the customers who paid top dollar for that equipment that just, you know, what are you supposed to do with this? You think this came for free? You paid extra for this. And what do you do with it now? Bookmark? Anyway, that's just my opinion. Doesn't mean the products are bad, just wish they didn't go so extreme sometimes with some of their switches on the motherboard. Come on. Physical switches on a motherboard in today's day and age, did we go back 15 years? Fair enough, this is from 2016, but stupid, absolutely stupid. Everything should be controlled through the BIOS and through software. Physical switches are a thing of the past. And if Asus is leading the way, why did they go backwards? You see, what happened is I embarrassed myself, and now I'm angry. I'm looking to point blame. Darn you, Asus. If you just do everything the way everybody else did it, you wouldn't have embarrassed me. That's how that psychology works. All right, I just want to put the screw back into the standoff. I put it in the 2280 position, and I don't want the screw to get lost. And so I will just put the screw down until it's snug. I don't want to over tighten it. I want the customer to be able to easily remove it if they want to use it. But at the same time, I don't want it coming loose and falling out, or it'll be gone forever. You can find them on Amazon and other places online, but you just will have to wait, and it may delay how long it'll take you to do your 5-minute project. You know what I mean? Put an M.2 drive in should be a 5-minute project, not a 7-day project, because you have to look for, order, and then wait for the part. Thomas Robinson's contributed £2. He says, Happy Boxing Day. The day where you get to box everything up and take it back to the store. Say, I don't want this, somebody gave it to me. We don't have Boxing Day in America, but in Canada and Britain, I explain it for people who don't have a Boxing Day. It should be called Reboxing Day, shouldn't it? Because you're putting it back in the box and taking it back to the store. When I think of Boxing Day, I think of Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, and Sugar Ray Leonard, and Joe Frazier, and Joe, come on, what's his name? Joe, well, Joe Foreman, Joe Foreman. Joe. Is that right? Go Sports. That's what Boxing Day is to me. Cage fighting. No, that's MMA. George Foreman, not Joe Foreman. George Foreman. Yeah. You should listen to my advice on who to bet on during the sports events. Or flip a coin. Joe Louis, of course, Joe Louis. I'm from Detroit. You got to know who Joe Louis is. If you don't know who Joe Louis is and you say you're from Detroit, you ain't from Detroit. All right. I want to put a Mugen 5 on here. Just be done with this, you know? I've got a couple of spare Mugen 5s. They cost less than half of what that liquid cooler costs. You won't get any of those cables or wires. You just have one little fan wire to hook up. Forget the tubes. Look at all the wires on this thing. Where did it go? It's over here. Over here. This isn't all of it. There's more. There's this one too. This goes in the side. Hi, I would like to put this in your computer. Would that be okay? And I'll charge you a lot of money for it. Just this one piece. How many wires do we have to manage now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And yet, how many wires do we have in the whole system? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then however many SATA cables you've got. So this has more in this one thing, or just as many as the rest of the computer combined. So can I double the number of cables you have? Because everybody likes the way this looks. But hey, you'll get pretty colors. The Mugen 5 is so much easier, so much cleaner. And I can promise you, the temps I see on it will be better than the temps I was seeing on that, because it's going to sit correctly. Now, in all fairness, I don't think that's the right backplate. And even if it is, it was installed incorrectly, which will have caused it to misshapen. It's deformed. And while it appears to sit flat on the counter, what you can see is there's an indentation right here. And you might think, well, when I turn this around, it shouldn't matter what direction we put it on, because this edge could fit around that indentation. But the problem is it's not fully indented. There's a ridge right here at the bottom. So that means when you put this on backwards or sideways, it's being put on like this. Do you understand? It's not that obvious. This is an exaggeration, but it's going to be arched. And it may be arched too. When it's installed, you can't see it with the naked eye. You just can't tell. And if it stays arched like this over a period of time, because this is plastic, or hell, if it was metal, it would permanently misshapen. And no matter, even after you correct it, it's now going to be arched, and it's still not going to sit right. Now, that's a theory. It certainly makes sense to me. But if this is the wrong backplate to begin with, it's never going to sit right regardless. The fact that it worked at all when it was put on sideways is because these are adjustable for different socket types. And if they weren't so adjustable, this maybe wouldn't have gone on. Well, no, on an Intel socket 1151, it's an equal distance. It certainly isn't that way with AMD. You can only put an AMD cooler on socket AM4 cooler one of two ways. Same with Threadripper. It won't go on 4 ways. It'll only go on 2, right? If you can put it on this way, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. With AMD's AM4 socket and Threadripper socket, it'll only go on 2 of 4 ways. It won't go on this way. With Intel, it's a perfect square. Maybe Intel needs to rethink that. I don't know, but Dennis says this is the right plate. I don't know. If that's the right plate, I have no idea why it won't sit correctly, because I put it on myself. The only other thing that could be wrong on it is there's a plate adapter or a socket adapter on the water block here. And I turned it around just for the sake of turning it around, but what I'm referring to is this plate right here. If you give this a twist, it comes off. Now, if this is wrong or if this is bent, any of that, you know, I basically flipped it 180 degrees. I don't think it makes any difference. But I was trying to figure out why it wasn't going on, and so that locks in like that. There's all there is to it, so I can't understand why it won't sit flush unless a wrong part was used. or a part was damaged. That's all that's it. I mean, that's all there is to it. It's not rocket science. I'm going to take a Ziploc bag and put these liquid cooler parts in this bag so I don't have them confused with other things later on. So we'll put the standoffs, the thumb screws, the radiator screws and washers. Like so. We got 1,557 people watching from around the world. Why don't you guys give me a shout out? Tell me where you are watching me from. What country are you in? Or what state do you live in? I don't need your street address and your personal info. But I'm always fascinated with how far reaching, you know, when I grew up, when I was a child, way, way back, it was pretty special to talk to somebody who lived across the other side of town. Well, that's not true. But, you know, when you talk to somebody on the East Coast and the West Coast, it felt like a special occasion because you were being charged $2 a minute or whatever it was back in the day for that phone call. And now here I am broadcasting audio and video, not being charged per minute, and it's reaching people all over the world simultaneously. That's mind-blowing. And it becomes real when I look through the chat like I can see right now, and I see states, I see other countries from Europe and Australia to Asia and the Middle East. It's crazy. Wales and Croatia and the UK and Canada, Greece, Australia, Finland, and of course all the states, you know, Florida, Arkansas. There's Bulgaria, clearly not a state. Mexico. And we'll go back to the states, Oklahoma, Mississippi. Red Dragons contributed $2. He says hello from Oklahoma. Thanks. Thank you. Barbados. Yeah. Belgium, Denmark, Slovenia. Paris, France, Germany. That's pretty freaking cool, right? Come on. That's cool. Mike Bader watches me from Detroit, Michigan. We all know if he's from Detroit, he's a cool dude. We see Portugal in the house and Brazil. Brownsville, Texas. Wilson, New York. Israel. Hungary. I wasn't asking if you were, oh my gosh. When I said Hungary, I was referring to a country. Oh, are you hungry? Look at him. No. I didn't realize that was going to happen. It's not dinner time. Don't get all excited. It's not your dinner time. You got 45 minutes before your dinner time. Forget that. I wasn't asking. It's a human word. It doesn't mean what you think it means. No, tail wagging and looking at me with those big eyes might have rescued you from the shelter, but it doesn't work on me anymore because I've had you a very long time. We've been together for like 8 years now. You need to come up with a new trick. Sorry, I deal with some business. Hello, we got people watching us from Pennsylvania and San Antonio, Texas, and Liverpool, Missouri. Dennis Van Hulve has contributed €20. He says, if you look up the H100i, you will see it's the same plate. And thank you for all the videos. So I looked up the H100i last night because I thought it was a 100 or a 115. And I know they have an RGB version, which this is clearly an RGB block on the water block. And the coolers I was looking at look like X's. It's like a square block with little edges that come out. I've not seen that one. But regardless of that, it doesn't really matter because we're going to move past it. Nothing I can do will seat that CPU flat. Well, let me rephrase. I tried reseating it, and I know I did it right, and it's still not seating. So there's something not right, and it is either the backplate or the standoffs. That's all I know. Whether or not the backplate is warped or is the incorrect backplate is possible. But I don't care anymore because we're just going to go to the Mugen 5. It's going to install perfectly. It's going to run quieter. It's not going to have a cable management nightmare. And unlike a water pump that'll die typically within 3 to 5 years, The Mugen 5 will last forever, certainly the life of the computer. And the worst that can happen is the fan can die, which is a stock fan, which you can buy literally anywhere fans are sold. And no tools are required to replace it. You just unclip it. Oh, I guess you got to put the little screws in that hold the... oh, wait a minute. No, you don't. Yeah, no tools are required. With a cooler, it costs a lot more money, takes a lot more time, and you will have to replace it. Whether the liquid gets all gunky or dried up, or it starts to leak, or the pump dies, there's all kinds of reasons. So for enthusiasts that want to maintain their own systems, have fun with your liquid cooler. For businesses and for people who don't want to mess around, they just want it to work, you're so much better off with a Mugen 5, in my opinion. But if I'm not having to fix or support your computer for free, you put on whatever you want, man. I don't care. I only care when it costs me money to fix your stuff. All right, let's get us a Mugen 5. I know I have one back here somewhere. Where's my Mugen inventory? Uh-oh, I think I only have one left. Say it ain't so. What happened? Did I use them all? Oh, I've got 2. All right. Whew. I have 2 left. I swear I had 10 of these last month or 2 months ago. Did I go through 8 of them already? Holy smokes. Better order some more. The great thing about having these coolers in stock is they generally don't go down in price. When you run a computer repair business or a computer business, having any inventory is dangerous because the prices generally go down. So if I bought a bunch of, let's say the Intel 660p was on sale for $185 for 2 terabytes. I go, that's a great price. I'm going to buy 20 of them. And then I sell, let's say, 10 of them. And I can't really mark them up. That's why I don't want to be in the parts business. What can I sell it for? Well, what's it sell for on Newegg? $200. Well, I bought it for $185 minus shipping cost. Where's my profit? I'm making $15 maximum on each one. So then you go, okay, well, if you sold 10, that's $150. Yeah, it's also a lot of work. What happens when the 665 comes out, or they go on sale, or the price just drops to $170 regular price? Like, I have no control over that. Now I'm going to sell the next 10 at a $15 loss. Or somebody's going to say, well, why are you selling me the 660 version when the 665 is better and just basically the same price you want to charge me? So buying the inventory, whether it's a CPU or RAM or solid state or any kind of storage, is a dangerous gambling game to play because it is possible prices could go the other way, but it's unlikely. But with power supplies, cases, and heat sinks, generally the prices are pretty stable and don't move. So if these ever go on sale, of course I want to stock up. I've seen these go for $70 retail. Right now they're pretty locked in at about $48, $49 on Amazon and Newegg. And I think that's a hell of a deal for what you're getting, and especially for what competitors charge for their equivalent product. This is easier to install, and I think it runs better. I think it's more efficient, or equally as efficient as some of the best out there that match these dimensions. You put a bigger heatsink on, you put another fan on, obviously it's going to cool a little better. But if you're comparing apples to apples, well, I shouldn't say that. If we're comparing PCs to PCs, heatsink to heatsink, when you compare the depth, the width, and the height of this heatsink with other equivalent heatsinks that are available from third-party cooler manufacturers, and then compare the installation procedure and how much easier this is to install, then compare the price, I think you will find that this cools better, at least as good as all those other competing products, is about half the price, and is easier to install than any other third-party heatsink apart from the push clips that the Intel stock CPUs have. I'll prove it because we're going to do it right now. So anyway, it was my long way of saying I can order more of these and let them sit on a shelf and not worry if I'm going to lose money, because they can sit on that shelf probably for a few months and the price isn't going to, I won't take a loss on it. The price isn't going to go down. And supposedly it was all over the news. President Trump and the Chinese government have made some kind of a deal to remove the the tariffs that were supposed to kick in on January 1st. And so a lot of computer equipment is supposed to not be tariffed. That's all I know. I haven't read up on it today, so I don't know if it's changed, if the news has changed since yesterday. And the deal, as far as I know, hasn't been signed yet, but the way the media was talking, it's as good as done. So that's good news for those of us buying computer parts, that we're not going to have to worry about those tariffs. Will this cooler work with Intel and AMD? Yes, it'll work with pretty much every socket out there but Threadripper. It'll work with FM2, AM3, AM4 on the AMD side, and the Intel side, 1151, 1150, 1155, 1156, 775, 2011, 2066, all of it, yeah. And a contribution just came in from Bordura Catalin, who's contributed $2. He said it's the Mugen 5 is on sale for $46.54. Well, that's only saving me $2 per unit. I'm not really excited about that, but thanks for letting me know, and thanks for contributing to the channel, of course. And did I get everybody? I think I got everybody. Kevin Billerbeck, it looks like I missed his contribution. He contributed $10. He said, I sent you $10 on Christmas, but don't know if you've seen it, like your videos in my computer I built last September. Last year, it's... Thank you, Kevin. You should have received a response. I respond to all the PayPal contributions. If you contributed during the live chat, during the live stream, then I wouldn't have seen any of that because that live stream ran for 30, 40 hours. You're hearing some loud bangs. That is a big issue right now. The city of Phoenix, and generally the surrounding cities, allowed for fireworks during a 10-day period from Christmas through New Year's Day, which is a new law. Because we live in a desert, they're usually very cautious about fireworks because it's a very dry landscape. It sets everything on fire. And you'll be hearing some bangs happening, and those are the neighbors around me lighting off fireworks. This has been going nonstop for 2 days now, and it's happening all throughout the hours of days and night. It's resulted in over 500 calls to the local police department. We can't differentiate between fireworks and gunfire, or the police are not able to. And they're just nuisance calls. They're happening at 2 o'clock in the morning. People have to go to work. This is creating a big, big issue in the city of Phoenix. Thousands of calls are flooding numerous police departments. If you combine all the different police departments in all the surrounding cities in Phoenix, of people complaining because other people are lighting off. Like, nobody's ever lit off fireworks on Christmas. That's weird. Generally, it happens two times of the year. January 1st, at midnight, when we enter the new year, fireworks go off. And then July 4th, Independence Day, fireworks go off. I don't know who's got all this extra money to go burn it, but they're literally spending money to set it on fire and blow it up. But apparently there's a lot of people in the Phoenix area that think that's a good investment to annoy the heck out of their neighbors. And I'm hoping they're going that a number of people will complain to reverse that city ordinance and put it back to being sort of a New Year's and 4th of July thing, because this is going to go on for days. Today is nothing special. Why are they doing it today? Why would you light fireworks off on Christmas Day? That's a weird thing to do. And it's not like I have one neighbor who's doing it. This is across the entire metropolitan Phoenix area of over 2 million people. It's more than, I think it's over 2 million people. A certain percentage of those people everywhere are lighting off fireworks enough to initiate thousands of calls to police departments and flooding their lines. So I apologize for all the banging and loud sounds you may be hearing in the background, but it's nobody shooting at me. You can tell because you would see me shooting back. So don't worry. But it's just something to complain about. Madi has contributed $5. Thank you, Madi. I appreciate that. We do, Phoenix, just to talk a little bit about that, Phoenix has a very large lawless culture. It seems to be getting worse. It's a very me culture. It's all about me. I don't care about anybody else. Nobody else is around. And I'm not saying everybody behaves like that, but there's enough of that behavior to expect it no matter where you go, whether you're driving on the freeway or on the roads. People will cut you off. People will do whatever they want as if you don't exist. And it's part of the reason I want to go back to Michigan. People don't behave that way in general. There's always somebody who does, but it's not as common as it is here. So whether they're shooting guns up in the air, which is very, very common here, or launching fireworks, it's really hard to tell which one's happening. And in all likelihood, it's probably both. There's a new sort of thing happening here where the young people with their fast cars or their fancy car, I don't want to say fancy, they will use Twitter or they'll use a Instagram, they'll use a social media platform to say we're all going over to this corner, and they will take over an entire intersection and do donuts in the intersection and basically create an entire hazard of that whole area where hundreds of people turn up, literally hundreds of people turn up on the spot, almost like a flash mob, and create all this noise and smoke and endanger the entire neighborhood until the police show up and they all scatter like cockroaches. And then next weekend, they'll find another place they'll all meet at, and this whole thing repeats itself. And this is a new phenomenon going on around Phoenix and the subdivisions around Phoenix. Again, not an issue I've ever seen in Michigan. It may happen, but it's just not happening as often. So the culture here is very lawless, or there is a large percentage of the culture, is what I should say, has a lawless attitude. And I want to get away from it. I'm just, maybe if I was 17 years old and I thought that's what made me cool, I would like it. But it's just really stupid, and it's really annoying. And for people who don't understand why Phoenix sucks so badly, you can hear it in the background during this broadcast. Part of the reason. Jens Carlson says, we have the same problem here in Sweden. Yeah, well, and again, I'm not suggesting it doesn't happen anywhere else. I can only compare it to where I'm from in Michigan. And when I was out there, and every time I go there, I don't experience or witness this, ever. So that's not to say it doesn't happen. But when you live in a really crowded inner city or urban area, as I do, I think it's to be expected that there's going, if it's Los Angeles or it's San Francisco or it's Boston or it's Chicago, when you jam a lot of people into one little area, it's real easy for everybody to get on everybody else's nerves. So when you go and you move somewhere that's less populated, everything's much more pleasant and people are generally kinder because they start to recognize you. They see you. When you're just in a rat race and every rat looks like every other rat, you have no interest in learning about them or recognizing them because they just look like another rat. There's just too many. There's just too many to try and remember. That's my theory. I don't know if it's messed up or not, but I just think it's just too many jammed in people in a little enclosed area. And though Phoenix is big, it's a lot of people to put in that space. And so you take all those people from Phoenix and move them to a giant state like Michigan, and suddenly everybody's got elbow room and everybody's got space, and so people don't generally get on each other's nerves. You can go out and spin donuts in your empty field. Who cares? When you're doing it out in the street in front of a neighborhood, endangering kids and animals, it's just an idiot thing to do. Let's talk about something else because I'm sounding like an old man. Bordera Catalan has contributed $2. He says, you're welcome. You're going to save $2.44. So basically, if I buy 20 Mugen 5s, I can get one free. I have no intent on buying 20 of them. I don't have any place to put them. But I would maybe I'll get 6 or something like that. 6 4 to 6 will be fine. So the savings isn't that great, but thank you though. Marty UL's contributed $2, and Marty says, I see my name on that cooler. No, that's not yours. Marty has ordered a 9900 KS and a Mugen 5, and those are the only two parts we've purchased so far. And the reason we bought the CPU is it's hard to find. It sells from anywhere from $629 up to $1,000. So we got it at that $629 price point. It's a limited edition. But I did actually get a pen and I wrote Marty. I actually did. This one doesn't say Marty, and I know you're kidding, but I want to be sure you know this isn't your cooler. Not that it would matter. Robert Grove says, I'm very happy I listened to you, Carey, because I installed a Mugen 5. Thanks. I tried many things before the Mugen 5. I tried liquid cooling, phase cooling, air. Anyway, listened to many others. Finally listened to you. Finally listened to the best, he says, you. Apples for the teacher. Right on, Robert. Look, it's not important to me that you agree with me. I'm not trying to sell you a Mugen 5. I don't sell them. I'm not an affiliate. I have no business arrangement with Scythe coolers. But I think it's a good value, and I want to tell you about it because I think it's a good value. So I'm glad that you came to the same conclusion I did. So these are the sockets this cooler is compatible with. As you can see, AM2, AM2+, AM3, AM3+, AM4, FM1, FM2, FM2+. So those are all the AMD sockets this is Mugen 5 is compatible with. On the Intel side, we've got the LGA socket 775, then 115X, that X can be any number, and then 1366, and then finally, also LGA 2011 version 3, with or without version 3, I believe, and then 2066. So this is a very compatible cooler. Basically, if you have a system built within the last 10 years, and it's not Threadripper, you can pretty much rest assured that that cooler is going to work for you. But not compatible with AM1. You know what's compatible with AM1? A brick. Oh, there we go again. Those traditional Christmas fireworks, just like my grandparents used to celebrate Christmas back in the 1930s way. Oh wait, that's never happened. Just like my parents used to celebrate Christmas in the 1950s. No, that never happened. Just like my friends' children would celebrate Christmas in the 1990s. No, that never happened. Just the way the millennials celebrated Christmas in the 2000s. No, that never happened. Ever in the history of time. It's never happened. There's no precedent for this. It's weird. It's really weird. It's Tuesday. Let's light off fireworks. Well, actually, it's Thursday. Another reason. Oh, do you work at night and sleep during the day? I don't care. Boom! Do you work during the day and sleep at night? I don't care either. Boom! Have you been to Phoenix? Boom! What? I said, welcome to Phoenix. Boom! Ix. But let me tell you how I really feel. So I've got my denatured alcohol. I think I've had this like 20 years. Used to clean VCR heads and tape deck heads with it. Now we're cleaning off the top of internal heat spreaders on CPUs to get all that previous thermal material. This will be a super easy job because we don't have much on there. just an ordinary Q-tip. And this alcohol just evaporates, so we don't have to dry it off or anything. It just evaporates right off the top. So you don't have to get this perfect, you know. We just want to get it as reasonably close to perfect. It's okay if there's a little bit there and there, here and there, but I do my best to clean it as good as I possibly can within reason. Like, I'm not going to spend half an hour polishing it. That's just stupid. And even though I don't have to dry it, you'll see I'm running the clean end of the Q-tip over it just to make sure that it comes off clean. If it's still coming off dirty, I'll just keep doing it till it's reasonably, 98% of the way there is pretty good. Good enough. You definitely don't want to mix two different thermal compounds together. And you only want thermal compound applied to the CPU, not to the heatsink, or you will have put on too much. I'm going to need that rubber glove here in a minute. So I've shown how to install the Mugen 5 on numerous occasions. I'm not really going to go through the entire how-to here on this video. I'm just going to move things along because I like to stop at 5 o'clock my time, which is about 23 minutes from now. So you'll see, just to give you an idea why I like the Mugen 5 so much, not only for all the reasons I've already mentioned, but this is less than $50 for this air cooler. Now that liquid cooler behind me that I just took out, look at the back plate. This is the back plate. This is the back plate, this is the back plate that came with the liquid cooler. This cheap piece of plastic. This is the back plate that comes with the Mugen 5. It's metal. I cannot twist it or bend it, no matter how, look how thick it is. I can't bend it. Which one of these things do you think is going to last longer than the other one? Which one of these things do you think is cheaper to make? Which one of these things should cost more? But which one of these things actually does cost more? Spend your money how you want. I don't care. So what I've done now is I've just put that metal plate on that I just showed you, and it's got little foam pads, and the foam pads go towards the motherboard. So it's super easy to put on. There are 2 holes at the top. Oh wait, I already said I wasn't going to go through all this because I've done it a million times, so never mind. Forget I said anything. I've got lots of other videos with nice close-ups and full explanations if you want that, but I'm starting to sound like a broken record. You remember records? Because I have to explain what that is now. Dude's old. Thinks I'm stupid. Thinks I don't know what a record is. I've seen the Guinness Book of World Records. Let's see here. Another Ziploc bag for, you guessed it, spare cooler parts. These are all the parts that would go with a different CPU, like an AMD CPU or one of those other sockets we aren't using, as I just knock everything to the floor. Glad I've got a floor, because otherwise that stuff would just fall forever. I think I'm doing it on purpose now. All right, if you're new here, you're gonna see a different way of applying thermal compound. This is the way a professional does it in the industry. We want to use a nitrile glove, not a rubber glove, not a latex glove, nitrile glove. We'll make sure it's completely clean. It's never been used before. This one's good. that's going to be enough, Carey. A little too conservative. Just do a little finger painting. I'm going to channel my inner Bob Ross, even though he didn't do finger painting. It's the best joke I got at the moment. We tap on it, and it's going to create little hills and valleys so that when we compress it down with the heatsink, it'll spread out nice and evenly. We won't have to worry about air bubbles. Not that air bubbles are any problem for anybody, except like some extreme liquid nitrogen coolers that might be a few air bubbles short elsewhere. This keeps everything nice and clean. And we can just take this off. We're done with it, turn it inside out. We don't have to worry about getting that thermal compound all over everything because it's really difficult to wash off. Once it's on there, it tends to stay on for a while. Now, it's going to be very difficult for me to install the heatsink with the system upright. In fact, all the work you just saw me do, you should be doing that with your computer case lying flat. It'll be so much easier for you. But you're not filming, and I am. And if I do that, you can't see what I'm doing. So I was doing this the hard way for your benefit. However, it's critical, as we've already concluded earlier, that the heatsink sits completely flush on top of the CPU. So I don't want to mess about with that. I want to make sure that it's done properly, so I'm going to lay the case flat. You won't be able to see. First thing I have to do, though, is remove the protective plastic off of the bottom of the heatsink. So we'll take that off. And that, again, has kept that free of contamination, dust, dirt, debris, oils from your skin, et cetera, et cetera. So we leave that on until we're ready to install. And then I've got to move this keyboard out of my way. I need some room. Well, this thing is heavy. That's my exercise for today. I'll give you a close-up. No, you know, it doesn't matter. I just realized I got a little bit on the frame. I want to wipe that up a little bit. Again, not that anybody's going to see it. It's just part of my pride. Now, if you look at the bottom of the heatsink, you'll see one of the screws sticks out on the side, and one is kind of in the middle underneath the heatsink. So this one that sticks out, this goes towards your RAM sockets on a AM4 or a socket 1151 based motherboard, which is the vast majority of boards that are sold for consumer use. And I want to tighten, I don't want to tighten, I want to start one screw. Just give it a couple of turns, get it started. It's spring loaded, and so if you tighten it too much, the other screw, you'll have to put a lot of force on it. And again, there'll be this issue of warpage occurring. So I just want to get both started so that they're lined up and are starting to go into the holes correctly, that they're straight, and that other one's going in now, so I can flip to the other side. We'll turn it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll go to the other side. Try and do it evenly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Come back over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are about half turns each one. Go back over here. It's not precise. You don't have to count to 7. I just make it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it just came to a dead stop. Now we'll turn this one until it comes to a dead stop. And I'm just kind of curious how many turns away I am to see how evenly I got it from guessing. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's already locked down. It's fine. Let's pick that up. Look at that. Now we're going to put our cooling fan on, which I have here. The side with the brackets is the side the air blows out of. And the side with the center that's spinning, that's the side that that pulls air in or sucks air in. So we want to mount this on the heatsink so that it's blowing air this way. Or basically just match the orientation of your rear case fan, which should be the same. So that fan is drawing air in on this side and blowing air out the back. We want to match that pattern. We want all of our air moving in the same direction from all of our fans. We want the front fans to draw air in on the front, push the air inside. We want this fan to draw air in from inside to push air towards the back, and the fan in the back to draw air in from the computer and blow it out. So our airflow looks like a big letter S. Kind of does this motion. And if you have a top fan, you want that blowing out too. But anytime you have an exhaust fan, you don't want to filter. You only want to filter incoming air that you are drawing in. Intake. I'm going to grab a nylon zip tie and tie this wire up right now, even though this case is pretty easy to get in there. It's just easier for me to put some cable management on that fan power cable before I put it in the case. I just didn't want it to fall and hit the floor. Don't judge me. Let's see, let's put this on first, I guess. Now, let's boot it up and run Prime 95 on it and see what kind of temps we're going to get. Keyboard and mouse are still plugged in. We've just given it power. Now I just need the HDMI cable. Let me push this back a little bit so we have room for the keyboard up here. And then, yeah, HDMI. Let's get that plugged in right up here. Switch it on and power it up. CPU fan is turning. Let's go to input 2 so we can see what's happening over here. So far, so good. and the system is dead quiet, but we still have the 3 case fans unplugged because those things are loud. You want to hear one? I can plug one in for you. Here, hold on. Let me grab a flashlight. And let's go to camera. Let's go back to camera 1 for a moment. Here's the rear case fan. Then let's unplug it. And the fronts are no better. The front fans are equally as annoying. So they're done. They need to be replaced. Nigel Baptiste has contributed $10. Hey, thank you, Nigel. And let's go back to the desktop. And let's see, I gotta make this full screen so I can see it. All right, here we go. We're gonna bring up hardware monitor. So we can monitor our temperatures. And then I want to bring up Prime 95. Now I want you to take a look at our idle temperatures in just a moment. Here we go. So here's our idle temps right now. The most we've hit since we started the software is 36 degrees centigrade. You can compare that with where we were before. Now I'm going to begin the test. This test is going to hammer all the CPU cores at 100% in a very unrealistic workload for an unrealistic amount of time. I like to run it for 15 minutes, so I've got a little timer here that I'm going to start, and we'll let that run until it hits 85 degrees centigrade, or we pass 15 minutes, whichever comes first. Ideally, we will never hit 85 degrees centigrade regardless. Within 6 minutes last night, this was hitting 81C on the previous cooler it had. And I would shut it down because after 6 minutes, you'll see we won't be anywhere near that. This cooler is amazing. And this cooler is very quiet. And this people should be sponsors of my channel, damn it. Sitting there talking all the great things about their product. I should be making money from that. Come on, Scythe, sponsor me. Got my eye on a Tesla I want to buy. All right, so we'll let that run. I can put myself up in the corner, guys, if I can get control of my mouse. That's the wrong mouse, Carey. It's this mouse here. Give me a minute and I will adjust. Nope, that's not it. I want that one. Okay, guys. So while we're waiting for this test, if anybody has any technical questions for me that I can answer, I'd be happy to address those now. The Cybertruck? No, I like the Model 3. Yeah, any technical questions, this will be the time to ask. And I still have a problem that I want to address where when all 4 memory modules were installed, the system wouldn't post. And I think that may be because of those switches set to like forcing XMP. You and I together, may have fixed this customer's system, but there was a lot wrong with it. Now, not everything wrong with it was critical, but it wasn't right. And it just goes to show you, a system can work and just not work optimally if you put it together wrong. Just because because it turns on and it runs doesn't mean it's running optimally or correctly or reliably. And I think it's one of the issues that happens with highly polished videos on YouTube is it gives people a false sense of the amount of time you should be spending, as well as a number of things that can go wrong and common misunderstandings, whether brackets are put on backwards or sideways or cables are put on in the wrong place, and how important that is, even if the effects may not be obvious to you. This customer could have been using this computer incorrectly, or not using it incorrectly, but could have had it built incorrectly since 2016, and they just never knew because it ran good enough. You know, they didn't know it could be running better. I see that a lot. I've had people bring me brand new computers and they get them back and they go, this computer never ran this fast when it was new. And I go, well, that's because you didn't configure it. You only had it running at half speed. I did? And this is back in the day, like where you had to go into the BIOS and set the multiplier manually. So if you just left the BIOS at default and you're putting in like an Athlon XP or something back in the day, and you didn't set your multiplier, then you were running at the default speed. You weren't running at the speed of that CPU. And while that issue doesn't exist today, certainly the switches on the main board for this, like if this customer had literally bought any other board, probably wouldn't have had those switches to play with. You know what I'm saying? So that should be taken away. The people that should be buying motherboards with those features are the people who are going to use those features, who understand what those features are for. That's not an average consumer item. That's an enthusiast item. So I think there's a big ball being dropped here on many of the tech channels on YouTube where they don't make these distinctions to people. They go, this is the best motherboard. You can do this and you can do this and you can do this. But most of you aren't going to go to that level of depth of knowledge to need those features. And I think they need to take a step back and go, the only reason we're excited about this board is because it has features that very few people like us would use. And if you're not one of those people and you don't want to become one of those people, then you should not be buying this board we're so excited about, because this could just as easily get you into trouble if you don't know what you're doing and you're messing about. So if you take it away and not make it an option for the end user, there goes another one. If you take that option away, you end up with happier customers who don't have to deal with these issues. We're just after 5 minutes on the test so far. You see our temps. Video is looking awfully dark. Let's see if we can brighten this up a little bit for you guys. The sun has gone down. Oh, I love these cameras. I love these cameras. Much better. Do you think you're going to be able to boot with all 4 RAM in the machine with the better cooling, or will the 2 slots be permanently damaged? I never said anything about the slots being damaged. I don't even know why you think the slots are damaged. I think those switches being set, the one that it was forcing XMP, was probably the cause of the problem. I won't know until I test it, but before I test that, I want to make sure the cooler is installed and working correctly. I don't want to add the RAM and test the cooler, and if I have a problem, not know which one caused the problem. This is very important that you slow down when you're doing this kind of work on an unfamiliar machine or with an unfamiliar problem to identify each step is working. Don't skip any steps. Don't take 2 steps at once, or you may end up having to go backwards 4 steps to figure out where you went wrong. So in the long run, this is faster and more efficient to do it this way. I've done it enough that this is how I've come to this process. Sometimes you get lucky, but when you don't get lucky and you got to go backwards, it'll take you 3 to 4 times longer than just doing it step by step like I'm demonstrating. So there is a method to the madness. Again, looking for any technical questions I can address here while we're waiting for this test to complete. And yes, the CPU is no longer at a 15% overclock, which is obviously going to make a difference. But you know what else is going to make a difference? Having the surface of the top of the CPU and the bottom of the heatsink mate completely and not have the center being untouched. I can guarantee you if the center was not being touched right now, we would be seeing at least 15 degrees hotter at this point. I couldn't get the CPU, because we're at 8 minutes, over 8 minutes now, and I couldn't get the CPU at this temperature in the first 4 minutes. It surpassed this in the first 3 minutes. So not only was it overclocked by 15%, but I want to emphasize the importance that the mating surfaces of the, in this case, the water block and the internal heat spread of the CPU were not flush. And even after reseating it, they're not flush. So something's wrong there. Toshiba sold off their laptop business to, I think they sold it to Sharp Electronics. And now Sharp has renamed the Toshiba line. I saw this coming because Toshiba shut down all the consumer repair shops they had a couple of years ago. Might have been 10 years ago. 5 to 10 years ago, they started, and they forced everybody that was a consumer to mail their computers into one repair facility. But they used to have authorized repair facilities in almost every state. And despite those repair facilities doing a good job and having an excellent reputation after over a decade in business, for at least one I'm familiar with, they closed them down. And you thought, uh-oh, something big is coming. There's a reason why they're doing that. Well, clearly they were shopping around to sell off the laptops, and that's exactly what they did. So no more Toshiba laptops. Dynabooks, is that what they're called now? From Sharp? You can see that the cores are running within spec, right? So remember the spec on this chip, the way it was engineered, is where we're running now. If you look down at the bottom of the hardware monitor screen, you'll see at the very bottom where the cores are running, and it's beautiful. It's perfect. And our temps, our maximum temps, are well within range. And it's amazing how CPU reliability goes up. And if you don't think CPU reliability is related to CPU performance, then you obviously don't run a business where you have any warranty work to deal with. That's the difference, again, when you're an enthusiast and you just want to play around with your computer and it crashes in the middle of Call of Duty or whatever, so what? Who cares? But when you're running a business and you've got customers waiting in line, and heck, if you're the customer and the business goes down, like credit card machines went down Christmas Day at one of the, I think, at Kroger grocery stores, and it affected a lot of stores. How happy do you think those customers were that had shopping carts full of food that they basically had to abandon and go somewhere else? All that time they wasted because they couldn't pay for it because the credit card machine was down. How much money do you think that cost Kroger? But hey, I overclocked your credit card machine for you. So that's why it sounds so silly to me when people talk about overclocking and how great it is, because it's really not great. It's really a horrible, horrible idea when it comes to reliability. But it's not to say you can't do it and be reliable, but it takes some experimentation and crashing to figure out where reliable is. If you leave it at stock, you can get on with your life. And most people won't notice a difference of a couple hundred megahertz. When you're back in the day when a 300 megahertz Celeron could be overclocked to 600, that was a hell of a difference. You doubled the speed. These days, you can go 15% faster of 4 gigahertz. It's almost not noticeable. You'd really have to run benchmarking software to see it. Ian McLeod's contributed $2 and says Slancha. Cheers, Ian. Thank you for that. Mark Y has contributed $2. He says, can I have 50 more? Can I have more than 50 characters? So limited. That's a YouTube thing. I got nothing on that, man. But thank you. Mark has contributed $2. He says, get customers see value when slow is their normal. I don't know what that means. Slow is a computer that crashes. Slow is a computer that you lose all the work you were working on because it blue screened. I don't care what your processor speed is if your machine just crashes and you've lost all your work. Or you're delaying customers because you have to reboot the machine because it crashed. Or you're unable to meet your project on time because you have to do it again because you just lost everything you did. That's not a faster computer. And some of the slowest people I know are the ones that emphasize the importance of overclocking. Think about that. Does grizzly thermal paste really make a difference like people say it does? No thermal paste makes a big difference of more than 2 to 3 degrees centigrade. And when you consider ambient room temperatures constantly in flux, it is highly unlikely that it's really making any scientifically modified difference. Now, if you live in a world where 2 to 3 degrees centigrade makes a difference in your life, buy it. I can't imagine any scenario aside from profoundly extreme experimental overclocking with liquid nitrogen where 2 to 3 degrees Celsius makes any difference in reality. But it's your money. The problem with the internet is there's a lot of false, inaccurate, incomplete, and flat-out lies with regards to information being provided. I encourage everybody to do these tests themselves. Buy yourself a couple of different kinds of thermal compound, put them on there, and test it. It's not a big investment. And then have that experience. It doesn't matter what anybody says on the internet. And while some of the people on the internet are telling the truth and are accurate, many others are not telling the truth, or their information is flawed in how they obtained it. Or they heard it from somewhere else and they're repeating it back. And they may not be repeating it back exactly. They might be embellishing. It's really hard to say. So it is my advice that any information, including what you see on my channel, is taken with a grain of salt. Let it plant a seed. But it's not there to replace your actual real world experience. Virtual reality is another word for pretend. And pretending to be an airline pilot is not the same as being an airline pilot. Pretending to drive a car is not the same as driving a car. There are G-forces and momentum and things you just can't feel electronically through virtual reality. There's things you can't touch, you can't smell. It's sort of like being on Oxycontin or some painkiller. It's a numbing experience of life. If you want to live life numb, you should look forward to death. As far as I'm concerned, life is about as much about feeling and tasting and hearing and smelling. It's about all 5 of the senses, and I'm leaving one out. Virtual reality is only about 2 senses. It's what you see and what you hear. You really can't feel anything. You can't smell anything. There's no sense of balance. There's no sense of gravity, and it's just not the same. It's just not the same. I'll put you in a car. I'll put you in a Tesla in ludicrous mode, and we'll go from 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. And then we'll put you in the video game. We'll put you in Forza. We'll put it 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. And we'll see which one of those is more than likely going to make you wet your pants. It is an entirely and unrelated experience between reality and virtual reality, or playing pretend. Shooting a gun in a video game is nothing at all like shooting a gun in reality. It is nothing. You have no idea how heavy that gun is, how deafening it is when it goes off, and the kickback, and people get bruised from the kickback on certain weaponry and how they hold it. It's just very unrealistic. And much the same when you're reading forums online and seeing videos that are highly polished and edited. crafted for who knows what agenda potentially. The information you're getting has been designed specifically with an agenda. Now, we don't know what the agenda is. The agenda could be to trick you. The agenda could be to help you. The agenda could be to sell a product. Who knows? And as long as you don't know that, then the only thing you can really rely on are people you know in real life, things that you witness firsthand, which is the importance of live video, or things that you've personally experienced yourself, which nothing else matters. Right? That trumps everything. I cannot explain to you how to ride a bicycle. I can show you videos and I can tell you about balance, but until you sit on a bicycle, you will have no concept of any of these ideas. You might think you know because you read about it online and you watch some videos, but it won't help you at all. No, it is something you have to do, and you will never ever learn it from watching videos, and you will never learn it from reading on the internet. You will never learn it from virtual reality or playing video games. Life still is life. The internet is not a replacement or an alternate. It is a piece about this big of this much. And so you are robbing yourself, as far as I'm concerned, if you invest too much of your life into this piece and ignore the rest of this and think that this piece is providing the rest. It's not. It absolutely is not doing that. So it's important, in my opinion, that we strike a balance between those two things and not rob yourself of one experience over the other. So we're at maximum of 71 degrees after what is now, I've been talking so long, 20 minutes. Because remember, I started this timer well after I started the test. That is a huge, huge difference. And it's a combination of, not being overclocked. Look, I can flip that switch back to 15%, overclock. It shouldn't be there. Customer didn't say I want an overclocked computer. Customer said I want a computer that works. I am frustrated. I'm pulling my hair out. It's driving me mad. That's not a person that wants to overclock. If you enjoy the challenges of fixing blue screens and PCs that don't boot, then you will enjoy figuring out your overclock, because every CPU is different. You can't overclock them all the same. Even the same model number of CPU on the same model number of board with the same RAM and the same everything will not overclock the same. It's an experiment, and you have to figure it out through crashing until it doesn't crash anymore. You got more time than me. It's amazing how much time people will invest and waste to get an almost immeasurable difference in performance. It'd be like, I'm going to go to the gym every day so I can live longer, so I will end up spending the equivalent of 5 years of my life at the gym, so I will live 3 years longer. That makes no sense to me. There's other reasons to go to the gym, but I'm saying if that's your reason, it's a bad investment, in my opinion. All right, so we're at 21 minutes now. I'm going to stop the test. It's obvious. It's obvious this cooler is fantastic. It's quiet. And then when we add the case fans, when we replace these case fans and we turn them back on and we put the side panels on, everything should be enclosed and actually cooler, because it's going to move that air efficiently instead of being open like this. If a machine is cooling properly, it should run cooler with the panels on. This is one of those things people are like, oh, it'll run hotter with the panels on. Yeah, with bad cooling it will. If your computer's running hotter with the panels on, then you don't have good cooling. Your airflow should be improved. When you lock the air in and force it to move across, see, right now the air can come out of here and the air can come out over there. And likewise, this air can go in. But when we enclose it and we force the air through a pattern and we have that pattern nice and clean, you put in too many fans, you disrupt the pattern. So too many fans is bad. You want to put in just the right number of fans, basically, where you're forcing the air to move in one direction from the bottom front to the top back, with some cases being different. But the majority of cases, that's the process. And it'll actually cool better when you do that right when the panels are on. Okay, there are some exceptions. Your graphics card sitting here, depending if it's a blower model or not, that may interfere with the ambient heat that sits in this area. And as a result, trapping that in with your case panel could result in seeing higher temps even though your cooling is correct. So there are exceptions to that, but I just want to emphasize that the engineering behind it, the reason they do that is so that the air moves efficiently, and having that airflow keeps pushing that heat out, and so things should run cooler rather than just the willy-nilly what's happening now. Now that being said, we're at 23 minutes. I want to stop this test. This is ridiculous. It's obviously not going to get any hotter, and there's no way the customer's ever going to run the system this hard for this long. There's no way you're going to run all cores at 100% for what is now 23 minutes. No way. So whatever the customer does with this machine, I know it's never going to overheat on him. Unless he starts overclocking it, then all bets are off. Okay, so let me shut this down and let's put the other memory in, and that'll be the last test for today. And then I should be able to put the graphics card back in it, and then I can load up his hard drives and see what he's got going on. I'll do that off camera because I don't know what he's got on there. And we can put this USB card back in. It shouldn't be a problem. I just take all that stuff out for diagnostic reasons. So I'm going to turn the power supply switch to off because I don't want to insert any RAM. I really don't want to work on anything in here with the power off. It's actually got to be completely cut off, which means unplugging it or at least hitting the switch to the off position. The power light, there's a little power switch here, and it's still lit up even though I've cut power. So that means the capacitors, there's still power on this board that's just draining. And I have to wait for these lights to go off. Otherwise, when I insert the RAM, it could have a little spark and it could cause damage. So the lights have finally gone off. And now I'm going to take this RAM module and it's going to go right into this slot right here. There's one. And then the last one is going to go right in here. Make sure they're all seated well. And they are. Flip the switch back on and hit power, and hopefully this thing will boot because it wasn't booting before. Michael Barra just contributed $5. He goes, here's another $500. That's $5. Here's another $5. We started our winter shutdown December 23rd through January 2nd. Lucky you. Everything's busier than heck for me. Okay, we're initializing here. We got the LEDs going. The diagnostic down here. Hey, look at that. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I was starting to think we had a bad motherboard, and the whole time it was just damn switches. Switches that ordinary motherboards don't have, by the way. I want to keep emphasizing that. Be careful of the motherboard you choose. Don't get yourself into your own little dilemma because you got sold on somebody's video review for something you don't need. So there it is, 32 gigs of RAM, looking good. CPU's running at stock speeds again. Yay! And let's shut her down. Turn that off. Power that off. There we go. Gary Tatum's contributed $5. He says that was a great show, Carey. Really informative. Hey, thank you, Gary. Thanks for joining me today. I hope everybody had a great Christmas yesterday. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, I still hope you had a great yesterday. Let's fit the screen. There I am. All right, guys. A couple shouts out to everybody who's contributed today. Stop that timer. And we can wrap things up because the dogs are like, you're a half an hour late. We're starving over here. It's not exactly what they're saying, but it's close enough. All right, thanks to Gary Tatum, Michael Barra, Ian McLeod, Mark Y, Nigel Baptiste, Glenn Davies. He said, here's $2 Australian for a newfangled phonograph player. Arvid Boleros has contributed 100 Norwegian krona. He says, if you have 4 NVMe drives, put 3 of them in the RAID 0, and the last one is the boot drive. I agree. I absolutely agree. What is your preference? Set up RAID in BIOS or let Windows take care of it? Oh, definitely set it up in BIOS. Madi has contributed again. Thank you so much, Madi. And then there's Bordura Catalin, who I met him in Michigan. Glenn Davies contributed $2 Australian. He said, the fireworks are for the launch of your yacht. Which yacht? Which one? Just one? I can only have one yacht? And thanks to David Register, who contributed $2. These are some I missed earlier. Louis67 contributed $5 Canadian. Lucas On contributed 20 Swedish krona. Says, how important is the RTFM procedure in an IT career? So the read the manual procedure is, in an IT career, it's really important, but you're not going to deal with different hardware. In an IT career, like let's say you work as desktop support at a corporation, they will have a standardized platform of hardware. And once you learn that like the back of your hand, it'll only change every few years when things get upgraded. That's why people that work in desktop support in corporate offices aren't necessarily that helpful when it comes to helping people with their home computers, because all they're doing is following corporate procedures. And as long as you follow corporate procedures, you've got a good career ahead of you there. And the only time you have to learn new corporate procedures is when you change jobs. Lourdes Evans contributes $2. Thank you, Lourdes, for your contributions throughout the year. And Dennis Van Hove, Red Dragon, Thomas Robinson, Kevin Billerbeck, Jonathan Mayberry, Henry Schur, Planet Cryos, Rusty Nail, Michael Brooks, John Yasuda, Hugh Wong, Chris Storer, who mentioned in his contribution, when I was asking about the 4F error, he said that according to the standard UEFI diagnostic codes, 4F usually means bad BIOS chip or flash. Well, you can see that wasn't the problem we had. And it emphasizes why I ignore these diagnostic LEDs, because all they do is provide useless information that is not, most of the time, relevant to what the problem is. This is why I use my brain and don't rely on what the computer is telling you as far as any diagnostics go, because if the problem exists, then how do you know the diagnostics are accurate if the diagnostics are coming from something that's having a problem? So you're saying the diagnostics are right, but the diagnostics are coming from a motherboard that's not working right. How can you believe it? If it was working, you wouldn't be getting a diagnostic code. If it wasn't working, then the diagnostic code is probably not going to be accurate because it's based on a non-working platform. It's not a separate unit you're plugging in and reading it like an OBD2 reader for a car. It's coming from the broken device. If the broken device was that smart, why didn't it just fix itself? Think about that. Jens Carlson, thank you for your contribution. And Bill Bauer. And Gary Tatum, Avardo Arredondo, who contributed $4.99, said, here's a donation for the channel. Keep up your hard work. I really enjoy watching the channel. Thank you, Avarado. Appreciate that. Sorry I missed it earlier. David R. Register, John Stellick, Aaron Armstrong, Jim Innes. Looks like I missed Jim's contribution. Thank you, Jim. Jeremy Kramer, Chris's Tech and Variety channel, Madi Yoelaken, Bear Paw, Steve Devine, Brendan Looney, James Griffin. James was the first contribution during today's broadcast. Watches us in Alaska. Thanks to all of you for your contributions. Thanks to everybody watching for just hanging out with me today. It's just good to hang out, you know. And to all my friends in blue, and for all of the kindness and support that each and every one of you show in the chat room and to each other that make this a very special place on the internet and a very rare place. And I intend to keep it that way, only bigger, right? I want to see this community grow because I know there's a lot of supportive and kind individuals, and unfortunately they're not as loud as that minority of jerks that seem to want to take everything over. But it ain't happening here. This is all an amazing community created by us and for us. And so I hope to see it continue to grow. I hope to add more friends in blue in 2020, a lot more. Let's double it, let's triple it, let's quadruple it, let's get bigger and bigger. And yet let's keep it down to earth, and let's keep it supportive, and let's keep it kind. It's really super easy. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will hopefully see you tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. If I can be live tomorrow, I will. What I will be doing tonight is I will put the graphics card back in. I'll put the USB card back in. I'm going to do some cable management and clean this up. And I'm going to talk to the customer if he wants me to replace these fans. I'll see what I've got in stock. I don't have any that light up. So if he wants light up fans, we'll have to order them. I'll run memtest 86 with all the memory installed, make sure, because it did pass in pairs. I'll run it again with all 4 to make sure it still passes. I'll hook his drives back up and just do a general looky-loo around Windows to make sure it's configured good. And remove any temp files, that sort of thing. Make sure all the updates are installed. Hook all the front port umbilicals back up. I think it's pretty well good to go. It's just little stuff I don't need to make a video on. And once we figure out what we're doing with these fans, it can get boxed back up and ship it back out to Tennessee. Everybody ought to be happy. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you all again next time. Until then, bye for now.